Chapter 1025. Regardless of whether Ling Han and Shui Yanyu were willing or not, Bu Jingyun was obviously determined to follow them. In his words, as the host, he naturally had the duty to accompany his guests and introduce them to his guests. He accompanied Ling Han and Shui Yanyu, and no matter where they went, he would follow their every step. It could be taken as being very enthusiastic, or it could also be taken as monitoring them. Ling Han had originally wanted to go to the various houses in the village, but the moment he deviated from the main path, Bu Jingyun would speak up to stop them and use the excuse that the people here did not like to be disturbed to stop them from going over. He even forbade the two of them from talking to the passers-by on the road. This attempt to cover up only made it more obvious, and instead made Ling Han even more suspicious. However, because he had not yet planned to fall out with the Island Master's faction, Ling Han did not take any drastic actions and returned to the manor after a simple stroll outside. Luo Wu and Fan Yong had both gone to look for Guoxiuwen to learn the art of puppetry. If they were really geniuses in this area, then after learning this technique, when they returned to the imperial capital, their status would definitely be able to rise to a whole new level. One would be able to obtain an important position in the clan, and the other would not need to follow Zhao Luan anymore. He would be able to stand on his own, and would have the right to establish his own force. Thus, the two of them were very proactive. At first, Luing did not seem to be interested, but later, she seemed to be moved, and frequently went out. In comparison, Yang Taiching only wanted to return, Jin Zhihui only had the word sword forging in his eyes, Yin Yuanxiang lived in seclusion, and had always been very unsociable. Meanwhile, Fu Tian was completely uninterested in anything other than cultivation. Time passed day by day, and Luo Wu, Fan Yong, and Lu Ying simply did not return. It was as if they had become addicted to learning the art of puppetry. On the seventh day, Guoxiuwen came over to invite Ling Han and Shui Yanyu to view the puppets he was about to make. Ling Han had no interest in learning the art of puppetry, but he was very curious about the uses of puppets. Thus, he readily agreed, and went with Shui Yanyu to the workshop in the manor. There were a total of 2 workshops here, one large and one small. The small workshop was Pei Ji's private property, and even his 5 disciples could only enter after receiving special permission. This was the large workshop. Pei Ji taught the 5 of them how to make puppets here, and they usually practiced here. The workshop was divided into several rooms, and the soundproofing was excellent. Otherwise, how could the people in the other rooms think in peace if they kept banging away? When creating a puppet, from the selection of raw materials to the carving of array patterns and the filling of true origin stones, everything is very particular. Guoxiuwen introduced the place as he walked. He led Ling Han and Yi Zichen to a house. This was his territory. The place was huge and filled with all kinds of materials and tools. I've been working on a humanoid puppet for the past few days, and it's almost at the final stage. This time, he finally didn't ride on the tiger-shaped puppet, but he still followed by his side. From the back, it was no different from a real tiger, but from the front, its eyes were obviously too fake. There were 2 red gems embedded in its eyes, and they weren't real eyes. He pointed at a humanoid puppet with an infatuated expression on his face. This puppet's whole body was wrapped in white bandages, so it could only be seen that it was humanoid. As for what it was made of, that was completely indiscernible. The achievement of a puppeteer is to create puppets that can pass off as real. He stroked this half-finished puppet and revealed an excited expression. He said, "Please enjoy." He cut open the puppet's chest. It was empty inside, and 12 pairs of ribs could be clearly seen. However, they weren't white, but a faint gold color. The bones have all gone through special treatment and have been plated with a layer of godly metal. Because the raw materials used to create the puppet are of different levels, the level of godly metal plating is also different. For this puppet, level 3 godly metal is enough, Guoxiuwen explained to Ling Han and Yi Zichen as he quickly processed the puppet. Take note, every bone has been carved with array patterns. This is very important. After all, this is not a living body. Only by relying on array patterns can every part of it be activated. Moreover, it has to be considered holistically. Otherwise, the fist will be swinging out, but the feet will be retreating. This naturally won't do. Guo Xiuwen was in high spirits. He didn't care whether Ling Han and Yi Zichen understood or were interested. He just continued to talk like that. The last step is to insert true origin stones to activate the array patterns. He took out a dozen or so true origin stones, and then said to Shui Yanyu, Miss Shui, do you want to personally insert true origin stones to activate this puppet? Shui Yanyu hurriedly shook her head. Though she knew this was only a tool, with the concept of human in mind, she naturally felt that such an action was extremely disgusting. Guo Xiuwen snickered, and didn't try to persuade her further. Instead, he said, no matter how powerful an existence is, it will all have its end, and no matter how beautiful a woman, there will also be a moment when she will wither. He stuffed the true origin stones into the puppet's stomach one by one. Then he stared at Shui Yanyu, his eyes burning with passion. Miss Shui, you are so beautiful and enchanting. This kind of appearance, this kind of body, you should remain forever and not age. Otherwise, it would be a kind of evil. This has nothing to do with Brother Guo, right? Ling Han interrupted. I've lost my composure, I've lost my composure. Guo Xiuwen hurriedly apologized as he closed up the chest of the puppet. Of course, he didn't use a needle and thread, but rather multiple iron rings. He fastened up the chest area, and after a closer look, he found that the other end of the iron rings was pierced through the spine. Now, please enjoy. He took a step back, a fanatical expression on his face. This puppet suddenly opened its eyes, and then stood up with a whoosh. It seemed to be a little dazed, looking left and right. Every year or so, a kind of substance would seep out from the Earth's core cave, and we call it divine mist. When the divine mist is infused into the puppet, it will trigger an unexpected effect. For example, Guo Xiuwen said from the side. This puppet suddenly stared at Ling Han, its gaze no longer wandering. Through the gaps of the bandages, it could be seen that a pair of eyes was exuding a light like that of an evil wolf. The humanoid puppet released a low roar, and with a stomp of its foot, it suddenly charged at Ling Han. This burst of speed was extremely fast. It stretched out a hand, and it could be seen that two of its fingers were not wrapped in bandages. They were like metal, and the tips of its fingers were incredibly sharp, exuding a cold luster. Ling Han was unafraid and greeted the attack with a punch. In the exchange of blows, Ling Han couldn't help but take a few steps back. Meanwhile, that puppet only trembled slightly, and its figure stabilized. It released another sharp howl, and once again attacked Ling Han. The strength of the middle stage of the high extreme of the mountain river tier, or even the late stage, Ling Han estimated. He activated the divine patterns of gravity, and that puppet instantly staggered, almost falling over. However, Ling Han also frowned, feeling very strained. His opponent only had the strength of the high extreme, yet he felt such a strained feeling. There could only be one reason, and that was that his opponent was too heavy. The same effect of gravity, applied on a rock in a mountain, naturally consumed completely different amounts of power. Thinking of what Guo Xiuwen had said before, he said that the skeleton of the puppet was plated with godly metal, so its weight had to be astonishing. What Ling Han didn't understand was why this puppet would attack him. Guo Xiuwen clearly hadn't given the order. The puppet continued to attack, as if it was determined to kill Ling Han. Chapter 1026. Stop. Quick, make it stop. Shui Yanyu called out to Guo Xiuwen. She was not worried about Ling Han's safety. As long as this damn pervert was not killed instantly, then with his recovery ability, he would be an immortal existence. But who would like to be attacked for no reason? Guo Xiuwen grinned and said, Miss Shui, I did not give the order to attack. This puppet completely acted on its own. How is that possible? Shui Yanyu said angrily. This puppet was made by you. If you did not give the order, why would it attack? Miss Shui, have you forgotten what I said before? Guo Xiuwen was not angry at all, and said, a mysterious substance will drift out from the Earth's core cave. If it is fused into the puppet, it will produce a very strange effect. What? Shui Yanyu calmed down. Ling Han and that puppet were fighting very fiercely, and the victor could not be determined in a short while. Thus, she was not anxious. Guxiuwen showed a strange smile and said, for example, the material will retain a part of its memory. Shui Yinyu did not understand. What did retaining a part of its memory mean? What did it have to do with attacking Ling Han? However, a thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. This puppet couldn't pose any threat to him. Thus, he was completely capable of multitasking. He battled with the puppet while listening to the conversation between Shui Yinyu and Guxiuwen. Could it be? His eyes became serious, and he drew out his divine sword. Each strike was swift and fierce. Shwa 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 shwa. After a few dozen strikes, pieces of cloth flew, and the bandages covering the puppet's face were torn apart, revealing its hidden face. Yes. Shui Yenyu's eyes swept over it, and she could not help but show an expression of extreme shock. No, it should be said that it was fear. Guxiuwen showed a devilish smile, and said, not bad, not bad. As you can see, the material of this puppet has retained a considerable amount of its memory. Thus, it will attack without receiving my order. That puppet was shockingly Luo Wu. He disappeared for a few days, and was actually made into a puppet? Or was this merely an imitation of Luo Wu's appearance? Ling Han suddenly came to a realization and said, no wonder you don't let us enter the houses of the villagers, let alone communicate with them. They are all puppets. Ha! Guxiuwen laughed heartily and clapped his hands continuously. Not bad, not bad. You've guessed it correctly. That's really commendable. After all, there aren't many people like you who can figure it out with just a hint. Ling Han was constantly dodging, and Luo Wu was launching fierce attacks at him. Luo Wu's strongest desire when he was alive had been to kill Ling Han. Thus, after being made into a puppet, this had become a memory that he could not forget. Why you guys are practically deranged? Shui Yinyu berated. She was naturally aware now that everything the other party had said previously was a lie. They had absolutely no intention of preparing a ship for them to leave. Instead, they were merely trying to keep them here. We've actually only turned you guys into eternal puppets, Guxiuwen said with a smile. Think about it. How long can you guys live? How many people can break through to the sun-moon tier? You guys can only live for a few 100,000 years at most. Won't you guys still decay and return to heaven and earth? However, after being made into puppets, you guys will forever maintain your current appearance. Miss Shui, you're so alluring, so why don't you keep this kind of beauty forever? He stared at Shui Yinyu, his eyes filled with infatuation. Why don't you guys become your own puppets? Ling Han broke away from Luo Wu and charged toward Guxiuwen. The puppet tiger actually released a furious roar, and the sound waves transformed into multiple circles that surged toward Ling Han. Ling Han's charging figure instantly slowed down, becoming slower and slower. The clothes on his body were also forcefully shredded. He was suddenly sent flying back. He couldn't help but be astonished. The strength of this puppet tiger had actually reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier. In fact, it might even be in the late stage or peak stage of the mountain river tier. Since I've let you guys know the secret of this place, how could I not be prepared? Guxiuwen laughed and said, however, don't worry, all of you will be made into puppets. Just thinking about it makes my heart beat faster. A puppet as beautiful as you is, playing with it a few times a day won't be too much. His last sentence was directed at Shui Yinyu. Though this had exposed his dark and perverted fetish, in any case, these two people would be made into puppets very soon, so what did it matter even if they knew about it? Shui Yinyu was both embarrassed and angry, and scolded, disgusting. I guarantee that I'll restore you 100% to your original appearance, and there won't be the slightest bit of distortion. An evil light flickered in Guxiuwen's eyes. He had absolutely no interest in normal beauties. Only after being made into an icy cold puppet would he be able to arouse his perverted desires. Not only him, but the 6 of them, master and disciples, were all such perverts. Luo Wu and the puppet tiger both attacked Ling Han ferociously, especially the puppet tiger. Its battle prowess was as high as the consummate level, and it wasn't a real living being, so it didn't have any vital points to speak of. Its muscles, skin, and bones had all been reforged, and it was practically a human-shaped weapon. Ling Han channeled his divine patterns of gravity, but immediately showed signs of strain. That puppet tiger was even heavier than Luo Wu, so it was really a huge challenge for Ling Han to make the divine patterns of gravity work on it. Shui Yanyu gave a soft shout and drew her sword to join the battle. Guoxiuan, however, didn't make a move. He merely crossed his legs at the side, appearing to be full of confidence. Of these two people, one was in the early stage of the medium extreme, while the other was in the peak stage of the low extreme. Theoretically, even Luo Wu would be able to suppress them, what more when there was a puppet tiger with battle prowess in the late stage of the consummate level. He was standing guard here because he was afraid that these two puppets wouldn't hold back and would tear Shui Yanyu to shreds. Soon, an expression of surprise appeared on his face because he discovered that Ling Han's defenses were really quite terrifying. He was actually able to withstand the attacks of the two puppets, which was inconceivable to him. Haha, what a genius! His surprise immediately turned into wild joy. This person's physique is incredibly tough, and it's worth using level 5 or even level 6 godly metal to cast his skeleton. Although he's only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, I'm confident that I can inscribe sun-moon tier formation patterns on his bones. At that time, he'll be a sun-moon tier puppet. Master also only has 2 pseudo-sun-moon tier puppets. If I can refine a sun-moon tier puppet, I'll be able to replace him and control all the resources here. After killing this person, I'll hide him and lie that his body was too damaged, so he couldn't be refined into a puppet, and I've already disposed of him. In any case, Master and Junior brothers only care about this woman. When I learn how to refine sun-moon tier puppets, I'll suddenly become the new master of this place. Shio. Right at this moment, Ling Han broke through the encirclement and charged toward him. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Chapter 1028. Why you can't kill me, or else my master will definitely not let you off, Guoxiuan said in a trembling voice. Ling Han shook his head and said, I thought that a pervert like you would be cruel to others, and also cruel to yourself. Why are you so spineless? He waved his hand and tossed Luo Wu's corpse out. This was really a corpse, because the true origin stones inside had already been extracted, and the formation patterns had also been destroyed. Aside from the fact that the skeleton was still relatively hard, there was not much difference between this and an ordinary corpse. You dealt with this puppet, right? Ling Han pointed at the corpse and said, You dug out all the internal organs of a person. With such ruthlessness, you would be afraid if it was your turn. Guoxiuan's entire body trembled, and he defended himself. No, it's not the same. That's just a material, not a person. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This person's outlook on life had already been completely twisted. He was obviously greedy for life, but his methods were incredibly vile and cruel. He slapped him and said, I don't want to read your dirty memories. Just answer my questions. Shui Yanyu walked over and pressed the tip of her sword against Guoxiuan's neck. She said, What's the point of wasting words with this kind of person? Just kill him. Oh no. Guoxiuan was scared to death. Don't kill me, don't kill me. I'll tell you what you want to know, please don't kill me. Amidst his screams, the sound of urine could be heard. This guy had actually wet his pants in fear. Shui Yanyu hurriedly covered her nose and hid far away. Ling Han also wanted to kick him. It was really rare to see someone so afraid of death. He said coldly, Then tell me everything you know. I'll tell. Guoxiuan nodded repeatedly. He began to tell a story. As early as 30,000 years ago, he had already become Peiji's disciple. At that time, he should have only been 6 or 7 years old, perhaps 2 years older, or perhaps 2 years younger. This had already become a blurry memory. In these 30,000 years, he learned martial arts and puppetry from Peiji, and in this process, he also gained 4 junior brothers. Before, he did not know how he had become Peiji's disciple, but he saw his own shadow in these 4 junior brothers. Although this island was very remote, there were always all kinds of accidents at sea, such as tsunamis or encounters with pirates. For decades or centuries, there were people who occasionally drifted here, but they were all refined into puppets by Pei Ji. Sometimes, there were refugees with children, and Pei Ji would pick those with good aptitude and take them as disciples. However, when he discovered that they had no future, he would mercilessly kill them. Because of this, Guoxiuwen deduced that he was also a descendant of some refugee. His parents and relatives had been killed by Pei Ji, but because of his good aptitude, he was spared and accepted as a disciple. At that time, he had not remembered anything or Pei must him. But because he, Pei, he, Dao, and xt. However, even though he had deduced the truth, he didn't dare to harbor the slightest bit of hatred toward Pei Ji. This was because Pei Ji possessed 2 pseudo-Sun Moon tier puppets. Even if the 5 of them teamed up, they would still be insta-killed. Pei Ji was an outstanding puppeteer, but he seemed to have been traumatized by something and had no desire to display his talent. He became the local tyrant of this island, bringing nightmares to those who drifted here. As for where Pei Ji had come from and where he had learned puppetry, Guoxiuwen did not know. He only knew that the sinkhole was very mysterious. Every year, a mysterious substance would drift out. It was like mist, and after being captured and fused with the body of a puppet, it could make the puppet even stronger. Moreover, it would normally take a few months to create a puppet, but with the help of the divine mist, it could be completed in a few days. Divine Mistaling Han was a little curious and asked, "Where is it? Let me see." Guoxiuwen crawled to his feet, trembling. He opened a cabinet, took out a jade bottle, and said, "The divine mist is sealed inside." His eyes were lowered, and a sinister look flashed in his eyes. This divine mist was very helpful for creating puppets, but if a living person breathed in, their mind would be directly corroded, and they would become a weapon that only knew how to kill. They were very similar to puppets, except that they would not listen to orders. Then, as long as he dealt with Ling Han, he would not be afraid of the remaining woman. Ling Han took the bottle, and naturally would not rashly open it. Instead, he threw Guoxiuwen into the Black Tower, and then entered with Shui Yenyu. To study the unknown, it was naturally the safest to do it in the Black Tower. Small tower, analyze what this is. Ling Han threw the jade bottle out, and with a thought, the jade bottle was instantly shattered. A black mist immediately surged in the air, transforming into various forms. One moment it was a beast, the next moment it was a bird, and the next moment it was a human. However, there was a single horn on its forehead and a tail on its buttocks. Demonic Chi. Small Tower appeared, and said almost at the same time as Ling Han. This was definitely demonic Chi. Ling Han had seen it in the lower realm, but although it was only a wisp, it was far stronger than the Azura Demon Emperor's. Alright. With a thought, the Azura Demon Emperor was captured by Ling Han. This demon had always been exiled in the Black Tower. "Greetings, Master. Master is as blessed as the heavens, and has boundless longevity," the Azura Demon Emperor said very obsequiously, vividly displaying the appearance of a despicable person. He glanced at Shui Yenyu, and immediately knelt again, saying, "Greetings, Madam. Master really has good taste. Madam is as beautiful as a goddess, and has an elegant bearing. She is definitely a peerless beauty that only appears once in millions and millions of years." Shui Yenyu was stunned. How could there be such an obsequious person? Did he have no shame? Ling Han humphed and said, "Don't say such nonsense. Quick, tell me the origin of that demonic Chi." The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly nodded and bowed, looking at that wisp of demonic Chi. His smoke-like body involuntarily moved violently, and he said in a trembling voice, This is a wisp of Demon Master's demonic Chi." Demon Master Ling Han glared at him, and said, "Speak more clearly." The Azura Demon Emperor didn't have any temper now, and nodded and bowed again. In the immortal realm, Genesis tier is called Saint, and in our netherworld, elites of this level are called Demon Masters. Shui Yenyu was surprised, and interrupted, "He's actually a demonic being of the netherworld. This lowly one is. Madam's eyes are indeed like a torch. Under your wisdom, all of my thoughts are like sunlight, and have nowhere to hide." The Azura Demon Emperor flattered madly. Ling Han was shocked. This was actually the aura left behind by a demon master on the same level as Genesis tier. Hold on, in the flame cave of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, wasn't there a passageway suppressed, and a being who called himself Demon Master Jin E was trying his best to fight his way over? He had actually argued with a great elite of the Genesis tier. Madam's beauty is like the sun in the sky, and can blind one's eyes. Madam's temperament is like the bright moon, so pure that it makes one feel ashamed of their inferiority. The Azura Demon Emperor was still shamelessly praising Shui Yenyu, but he suddenly pounced toward that wisp of demonic qi. Haha, as long as I fuse with this wisp of demonic qi, my strength will greatly increase, and I'll recover to the battle prowess of the Mountain River tier. Killing you all will be as easy as slaughtering chickens. He shouted excitedly. Chapter 1029. The Azura Demon Emperor was also a coward. In order to survive, he had kneeled before Ling Han, who was in the heaven tier, back then. As the saying went, a man could bend and stand tall, and he kept bending so that he could one day straighten his back like a little brother. Now was the best chance. He passed through the barrier of 2 realms, and forced his way into a small world. His battle prowess was greatly reduced, and he only had 15 stars of shattering void tier battle prowess left. Thus, he knew that he was no match for a freak like Ling Han. But as long as he absorbed this wisp of demonic qi, his battle prowess could recover to the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, could he match the power of immortals? What a joke! The demonic qi was already right in front of him, and the Azura Demon Emperor revealed an intoxicated expression. Being able to absorb this wisp of demonic qi on the level of a demon master would greatly improve him, because there was a sliver of a demon master's comprehension of martial art within it. For beings of the immortal realm, this was a fatal poison, but for beings of the netherworld like him, it was a super tonic. Moreover, it was only a sliver, or else he wouldn't dare to swallow any more, or he would definitely explode. The Genesis tier was too strong, too strong. 1 inch, half an inch. Why couldn't he move forward? The Azura Demon Emperor turned around in shock, only to see that Ling Han's large hand had already grabbed him firmly, making him unable to move forward at all. Not bad, now you're more courageous? Ling Han said with a smile. Master, I'm innocent. The Azura Demon Emperor was originally in the form of smoke, and didn't have a physical body. He immediately stretched his body and hugged Ling Han's thigh. I was just muddled by greed, and my heart was blinded by lard. Master, just treat what I said as nonsense. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, You really want to swallow this mass of demonic qi? Please reward me, Master. The Azura Demon Emperor's face was filled with a fawning expression. Ling Han, don't be fooled by him. Shui Yenyu said. This Demon Emperor was too two-faced. The Azura Demon Emperor's heart instantly clenched. Ling Han seemed to have the intention to relent, but with Shui Yenyu's persuasion, this matter was about to be dropped. All right, I'll bestow it to you, Ling Han said with a smile. Demonic qi was poison to him, and it would only bring harm and no benefit. He loosened his grip. The Azura Demon Emperor was overjoyed that he had regained his freedom. He immediately opened his mouth and swallowed that ball of demonic qi. Hong, his body was expanding as if he had become a balloon. However, he quickly shrunk back and returned to his normal size. There didn't seem to be any difference, but one could clearly sense that the Azura Demon Emperor's aura was rapidly increasing. In an instant, he broke through the divine state and exuded an aura that was as vast as the ocean. Mountain River tier, low extreme, peak stage. Haha. The Azura Demon Emperor instantly laughed loudly, appearing to be very proud of himself. Ling Han, oh Ling Han, you're really too stupid. You actually allowed me to recover my strength. Today, I'll show you what immortal level power is. Shui Yenyu was dumbfounded. Naturally, it wasn't because she was shocked by the Azura Demon Emperor's strength, but rather because he was so shameless. He actually changed his attitude faster than flipping the page of a book. Previously, he had still called her master, but now he was so shameless and arrogant. Did he have any shame? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I've recovered my strength to the peak stage of the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. How did you know? The Azura Demon Emperor couldn't help but be surprised. It wasn't strange for him to know the level of immortal level, but how could he see through his cultivation level so easily? Just thinking about it made him feel strange, and gave him an ominous feeling. Ling Han sighed and said, "Little Azura, how many years have you been here?" "Don't call me little brother, I'm the Azura Demon Emperor." The Azura Demon Emperor was flustered and exasperated. He was willing to be a little brother because a man could bow and submit when necessary. Did he think he was shameless, and born to be a lowly wretch? Ling Han continued, "You've become stupid after being locked up. Did you think that my strength wouldn't increase after so many years?" The Azura Demon Emperor's expression finally changed drastically. This brat was a freak, and he couldn't be measured with common sense. Ling Han smiled faintly and released his aura. Instantly, an aura that was far more powerful than the Azura Demon Emperor's surged out. "Master!" The Azura Demon Emperor immediately pounced at Ling Han's feet, hugged his thigh, and rubbed his face against it. "I've really missed you too much. One day without you feels like 3 years. Shui Yanyu grimaced. She was already completely speechless. "Weren't you quite fierce just then?" Ling Han asked slowly. Just then. That was because I had a split personality," the Azura Demon Emperor said seriously. "Master, you know, when people are locked up for a long time, they will become mentally deranged and develop a second personality. This is what happened to me. However, don't worry, Master, I've already destroyed this personality. From now on, I'll be your most loyal dog. If you tell me to go east, I won't dare to go west." Ling Han stared at him and said, "I've already given you 2 chances. If the Azura Demon Emperor could sweat, he would definitely be covered in cold sweat by now." However, he still wiped his forehead out of habit. After all, he had possessed the body of a human for a long time, and this was a habit. "Don't worry, Master. I definitely won't make the same mistake a 3rd time," he vowed solemnly. This time, he was really frightened by Ling Han. It had only been a few years, and Ling Han had advanced from the heaven tier to the immortal level. Moreover, he hadn't just advanced to the mountain river tier, but had reached the medium extreme. If this continued, wouldn't he become a Genesis tier in a few hundred or a few thousand years? There were no disadvantages to having such a master. Instead, there were only advantages. The Azura Demon Emperor definitely had an extremely realistic personality. His attitude instantly changed. As long as Ling Han could maintain this kind of progress, he was willing to completely submit and become an obedient dog. He knew that even as a dog, he would be an incredibly noble dog. Even people countless times stronger than him would have to be respectful to him. Ling Han nodded and said, "This is the last chance. There definitely won't be a 3rd time." "Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master." The Azura Demon Emperor was overjoyed. Ling Han planned to completely subdue the Azura Demon Emperor because the characteristics of the Azura Demon Emperor were actually quite useful. For example, he could enter a puppet. "I'll leave this puppet to you. Possess it and fight for me in the future." Ling Han summoned the puppet tiger. The Azura Demon Emperor didn't have any objections to possessing a human or a dog. He immediately accepted the order and burrowed into the puppet tiger. Instantly, this fierce tiger began to move. "A master, this is a consummate level vessel." He immediately became excited. One had to know that even at his peak, he was only in the medium extreme. He was still very, very far away from the consummate level. Not satisfied? Satisfied, 100% satisfied, 1000% satisfied. The Azura Demon Emperor was extremely excited. Ling Han nodded and said, "As long as you obediently work for me, I can still give you Sun Moon tier and Heavenly Body tier vessels in the future. In fact, it's not impossible for me to obtain some Genesis tier demonic chi for you to swallow. Master, you're really too good to me. I'm willing to do anything for you." The Azura Demon Emperor floated out of the puppet tiger and went to hug Ling Han's thigh again. This time, even if he had obtained such a powerful vessel, he didn't dare to have the slightest bit of disloyalty. This thing had been seized by Ling Han. Master was really too strong. He could even trample to death those at the consummate level. It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 1030. Ling Han grabbed Guxiuan. He had been knocked unconscious by Ling Han's 7-kill subduing soul technique, and he still hadn't woken up. The lower the cultivation level of this secret technique, the more powerful it would be. For those in the low extreme, it would be a piece of cake to directly kill them. He was slapped awake, and he opened his eyes abruptly. He was stunned. What was this place? How long had he been unconscious for him to leave the Earth's core island and appear in such an unfamiliar environment? When he saw Ling Han, he couldn't help but be terrified because Ling Han was completely fine. Did he not open the bottle? No, there were clearly fragments of the bottle in the distance, so he definitely opened it. Disappointed? Ling Han smiled and said, "Tell me, what's the reason why I shouldn't kill you?" I'm also a victim. I was forced," Guxiuan said in a trembling voice, pushing all the blame onto Pei Ji. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Perhaps you were forced at first, but I don't feel a shred of regret from you now. You're no different from Pei Ji. Little Azura, kill him." The Azura Demon Emperor immediately entered the puppet tiger, raised its head, and said, "As you wish, master." Guxiuan was shocked and confused. This puppet tiger was personally made by him, and he had always sat on it, so it could be said that he knew everything about it. But now, this puppet actually spoke, almost scaring him to death. From his memory, he had never left this island, so how could he know about the netherworld? He only felt that it was inconceivable. You're also a puppeteer?" He thought he understood. Ling Han was definitely a puppeteer countless times more powerful than him, which was why he could easily take away his puppet. Now, he even made the puppet speak, and it became incredibly intelligent, like a demonic tiger with intelligence. The Azura Demon Emperor pounced, and with a bite, Guxiuan's neck was bitten off. Under the impact of the destructive power, his divine sense was also destroyed, and he instantly died. "Stay beside me and don't attack randomly," Ling Han ordered. The Azura Demon Emperor was overjoyed. Master was going to let him out? So touched. With a wave of Ling Han's hand, 2 humans and a tiger appeared in the workshop. "This is the immortal realm," the Azura Demon Emperor exclaimed in astonishment. Although he had already guessed that Ling Han had to have entered the immortal realm after learning that Ling Han was in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, he was still extremely astonished when he personally experienced the completely different regulations of heaven and earth and the vast spiritual chi of the immortal realm. It had only been a few years, yet Ling Han had already advanced into the immortal level. In fact, he could even casually take out a vessel at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. This was a huge shock to him. "Lead the way," Ling Han ordered. "Yes, master." The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly nodded. This was a good opportunity for him to show his master just how loyal he was. He immediately pushed open the door and walked out. "Search every room," Ling Han said. Bam! The Azura Demon Emperor slammed open the door to the room next door. Aside from the tools and materials that littered the surroundings, there was only an empty platform in the middle. There was nothing on it and there was no one inside either. They retreated, and the Azura Demon Emperor slammed open another room. Shui Yanyu immediately showed a pained expression and turned around to vomit. The layout of this room was no different from the previous 2 rooms. There were tools and materials all around, and there was also a platform in the middle. However, there was a corpse that had been dismembered on the platform in this room. It was Fan Yong. He hadn't been made into a puppet yet, so his face retained the terror he had when he was alive. Anyone who saw him would shiver in fear. Ling Han even suspected that he was still alive when he was dismembered. He had to watch helplessly as his body was dismembered, his organs dug out, and every drop of blood drained. What kind of terror was this? No wonder his expression was so twisted. "These animals," Shui Yanyu chided from the side. Ling Han waved his divine patterns of flame and burned Fan Yong's corpse to ashes. Although he had a grudge against him, his crimes had been erased after death. "Let's go." The Azura Demon Emperor obediently led the way. He knew that his master was currently in a very bad mood. His voice was icy cold, as if it had come from an icy cavern. Although this was very common for him, wasn't it just dismembered? There were more things in the netherworld that were 100 or even 1,000 times crueler than this. Peng, he crashed into the fourth room. There was a living person here. You, how did you come in? This is eldest senior brother's puppet tiger. Why is it with you? The person in the room was Dong Yulong. He was busy and only turned around because he was disturbed. On the platform behind him, there was a corpse that was being processed. Blood flowed all over the platform. It was a female corpse. Her slender legs and arms had all been separated from her torso. Her body had also been cut open, and her organs were being dug out. This woman was Lu Ying. She actually hadn't breathed her last. Her eyes turned slightly and she looked at Ling Han. Her lips moved a few times, but she couldn't make a single sound. However, Ling Han could guess what she wanted to say. Kill the animals here. Also, kill her and free her. Kill? Ling Han said coldly. The Azura Demon Emperor instantly pounced, charging toward Dong Yulong. A puppet wolf appeared, blocking the Azura Demon Emperor. This was shockingly also a puppet at the consummate level, and its battle prowess wasn't much inferior to the Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han took a few steps forward, and his divine sense spread out like a net. Xiao, that puppet wolf disappeared without a trace. Poof. Dong Yulong's expression was the same as Guxiuwen's. His eyes were wide open, and his tongue was long. However, the Azura Demon Emperor had already pounced, and struck out with a claw. His entire head was smashed into pieces, and his headless body instantly collapsed. Ling Han's sword flew out, and extinguished the remaining life force of Lu Ying. She looked at him with gratitude and slowly closed her eyes. He waved his hand again, and Lu Ying's body was burned to ashes. They entered the fifth room, and shockingly found another victim here. Yang Taiching. This man had also been dismembered, and every part was soaked in a silver liquid. However, unlike Lu Ying, who still had a shred of life force left, he had been dead for a while. This should have happened today, because Ling Han had seen him in the morning. Towards Luo Wu and Fan Yong, Ling Han only had killing intent, and towards Lu Ying, Ling Han didn't have any good feelings either. After all, she had come to kill him. However, he admired Yang Taiching very much. After all, there weren't many people who could let go of their likes and dislikes, and stick to their principles. Moreover, they had fought side by side, and had once trusted each other with their backs. Brother Yang, don't worry. I will definitely kill all of those animals, and let you rest in peace in the netherworld. Ling Han said solemnly. Then he suddenly turned around and said, Go back, maybe we can still save the others. Chapter 1032. The current Peiji was extremely strange. Up to his thighs, he was still a normal person, but starting from below, he was like the roots of an old tree. They were all intricate metal rods that propped him up high into the air, making him look like a giant. Haha, how can I destroy you? He laughed loudly. The countless metal rods below him moved like a centipede, advancing toward Ling Han and the others. Everyone hurriedly scattered to avoid being knocked down by Peiji's attack. Ling Han used the annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiu xiu xiu. Arrows of origin power shot out. Some of these origin power arrows were silver white, some were crimson, and some were earth yellow. The silver white arrows were normal origin power arrows. The crimson arrows were divine patterns of flame, and the earth yellow arrows were divine patterns of gravity. Peiji didn't dare to let these arrows hit him. He raised some legs and wove a dense net in front of him, blocking these origin power arrows. Not only that, but the attacks of others also couldn't break through this net. The difference in cultivation level was too big. He was an elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and what about Ling Han and the others? Fu Tian, unconscious. Yin Yuanxiang, late stage of the medium extreme, battle prowess also at the peak stage. Jin Zhihui, early stage of the medium extreme, battle prowess also at the early stage. Shui Yanyu, peak stage of the low extreme, battle prowess surpassing 1 star. Ling Han, early stage of the medium extreme, battle prowess surpassing 5 stars, the limit possibly reaching 6 stars. They combined weren't a match for Peiji. A bunch of brats dare to attack me? You're really seeking death. Peiji sneered. Ling Han's figure flashed, and shwa, a net spread out. He had been using the crimson ground locking net before, and now it was completely activated. As the net spread out, it became larger and larger. This kind of treasure naturally had a lot of space. At its limit, it wouldn't be a problem for it to envelop a mountain, what more when Peiji was only 6 meters tall. Peiji didn't expect this, and the space here was limited, so he had nowhere to hide. He was instantly enveloped by the net. What? Why has my power dropped so much? He paled in shock. His cultivation level had actually dropped to the peak stage of the high extreme. It had been suppressed by an entire minor level. As a puppeteer, he wasn't known for his battle prowess. Thus, he was naturally a little flustered when his cultivation level was reduced by a small realm. Moreover, he didn't know what material the net was made of. He couldn't break free no matter how hard he tried, and it even affected his mobility. He hurriedly let out a low roar, and the female puppet immediately turned around and grabbed at the crimson ground locking net. The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly chased after her, and said, "Damned bitch Wu, have a taste of my saber." He pulled out a saber that had been stabbed into his body, and slashed at her. This guy was a wretched villain. Once he let go of his dignity as an expert, he was truly shameless to the extreme. His mouth was full of vulgarities and vulgarities. The female puppet, however, simply pressed a hand behind her as she grabbed the crimson ground locking net with her other hand. She was a pseudo-sun moon tier being, so this grab was extraordinarily powerful. Instantly, a large section of the large net was lifted up. Meanwhile, the Azura Demon Emperor's saber also arrived, and it landed on her palm, releasing a loud boom. Everyone felt as if their eardrums were about to rupture. They couldn't hear anything else, and could only see a dazzling flash of light as the saber collided with the palm. The Azura Demon Emperor was actually forced back. Obviously, though these two puppets were pseudo-sun moon tier, the female puppet was stronger. Pa-pa. Strange footsteps rang out, and more puppets of all shapes and sizes crawled out from various corners. "Ha, kill all of these people." Peiji pointed at the net, his face filled with killing intent. Although he was forced into such a sorry state, and this made him angry and humiliated. There were at least a few hundred of these puppets, and there were even more surging out endlessly. According to Guoxiuwen, he had stayed here for more than 30,000 years, so Peiji had definitely stayed here for even longer. In such a long time, how many puppets had he created? This could completely be called an army. Though they were lacking in intelligence, they also had many advantages. They didn't have vital points, didn't know pain, and didn't fear death. At this time, Fu Tian had also woken up, but he was severely injured, and his battle prowess had dropped greatly. Everyone was apprehensive. With so many puppets, they could be crushed to death with their numbers alone. Ling Han roared, and launched a sudden attack. Xiu 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 xiu. Once he charged out, he naturally became the main target of the puppets, and countless attacks were launched at him. There were sharp claws, blasts of sound, and black bullets of light. Ling Han was unafraid. These puppets were basically all in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, so no matter how many attacks were launched at him, he didn't even need to defend himself. He simply spread out his divine sense, and wherever he charged, the nearby puppets would disappear one by one. The nemesis of the puppets had arrived. His target was that female puppet. As long as he could capture her, the Azura Demon Emperor's battle prowess would be released, and suppressing Peiji would be a piece of cake. Quickly release this thing for me," Peiji said in exasperation. Over a dozen puppets grabbed onto the net, and all exerted force, wanting to open the net and release Peiji. Ling Han impulsively spread out his divine sense, and wrapped it around the female puppet. Then, naturally it was done. Peiji had just escaped from the net, and when he saw this scene, he was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. Previously, he hadn't noticed how the male puppet had disappeared, and now he finally saw the process. But to be honest, he was still incredibly confused, and had no idea what had happened. "Foot-legged old man, I'll kill you." The Azura Demon Emperor laughed loudly, and leaped towards Peiji. Peiji was shocked. He naturally knew what kind of abilities this puppet possessed, and hurriedly shouted, "Stop him!" He glared hatefully at Ling Han, and felt that this brat was incredibly strange, as if he was fated to be his nemesis. One had to realize that the opponent's battle prowess at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier had all been dealt with, and the remaining puppets were all useless chickens and dogs that couldn't be considered a threat at all. Yet, he had completed this unbelievable reversal. He was, after all, astute, and knew that he couldn't fight for a moment's pride. He immediately turned around and fled, saying, "Brat, if you want to chase after me, your companions are going to die." He laughed loudly, and fled as quickly as he could. Ling Han only hesitated slightly, and then turned around to help the others destroy the puppets. With a powerful helper like the Azura Demon Emperor, added with the fact that Ling Han was the nemesis of puppets, though there was an absurd number of puppets here, and they surged out like a tide, they were also like leeks, being harvested in batches as they appeared. After 15 minutes, the puppets finally ran out of reinforcements. Killing one meant that there would truly be one less puppet. Chapter 1033. With Ling Han, the nemesis of puppets, and the Azura Demon Emperor, the pseudo-Sun Moon tiered elite guarding them, they finally wiped out these puppets. Yin Yuanxiang, Fu Tian, and Jin Zhihui all sighed with emotion. If it weren't for Ling Han, they definitely wouldn't have been able to escape this time. No matter how freakishly strong they were, how could they be a match for pseudo-Sun Moon tier puppets? Even Yang Taiching had suffered a calamity. Speaking of Yang Taiching, everyone sighed. This person could adhere to his principles, which was really rare in this world. Once the battle ended, Fu Tian began to heal his wounds. He had forcibly fought before, not wanting to be a burden to others. His personality could be said to be very competitive. "Master, should we chase after that broken leg guy?" the Azura Demon Emperor asked. Ling Han thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "No need. He's the local tyrant here, and has been here for tens of thousands of years. He definitely won't let us find him. But if we don't find him, he will continue to do evil," Shu Yenyu said. Ling Han said, "Then let's search here first to see if that old thief left behind any clues." Actually, we don't know anything about this old thief at all. Only by knowing oneself and the enemy can we act accordingly. Master is wise. The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly flattered. Ling Han threw out a puppet bear, and said, "Possess this puppet?" The Azura Demon Emperor didn't understand. Wasn't his puppet stronger now, reaching pseudo-Sun Moon tier, so its battle prowess was who knew how much stronger than the puppet bear. However, when he saw the disgust in Ling Han's eyes, he instantly understood. As a human, his master naturally hated turning humans into puppets. He didn't dare to resist, and hurriedly possessed the puppet bear. In any case, this kind of thing didn't have a life or will, so it was very easy for him to change back and forth. Ling Han burned the two human-shaped puppets with divine flames. Previously, it was to deal with Peiji, so now it was naturally to let the dead rest in peace. The few of them began to search in this workshop. Ling Han didn't have much hope at first, but they found a diary here that revealed the reason and process of Peiji's path to becoming a pervert. As it turns out, the man and woman that he made into puppets are his senior brother and senior sister. All three of them are disciples of the same puppet master. He always had a crush on senior sister, but senior sister married his senior brother. He didn't show it on the surface, but after his master died, he poisoned the two of them. After controlling them, he turned them into puppets. No wonder the male puppet's body is covered in swords, it's because Peiji hates him too much. What a pervert, turning the woman he likes into a puppet. The diary also clearly described the process of him making his senior brother and senior sister. The insults, reprimands, anger, fear, and every detail was very detailed, as if he was constantly reliving it. "I was betrayed by my own junior brother, and personally witnessed myself being made into a puppet. What kind of darkness is this?" Shu Yenyu said with a shake of her head, filled with fury. "That's why you can't just rely on talent when taking a disciple. The most important factor is still character. Otherwise, it's equivalent to raising a wolf by your side. Ling Han was also very emotional, causing the Azura Demon Emperor to panic. Master wasn't hinting at him, was he? Right at this moment, a sword light flashed, piercing toward Ling Han's back. This strike was fast and urgent, and it was far too unexpected. The battle had already ended, and only the few people who had fought alongside him were left. Why would someone suddenly attack Ling Han? This sword pierced deeply into Ling Han's body. He roared loudly and turned around to deliver a palm strike. Meanwhile, the Azura Demon Emperor also reacted and hurriedly released a bear's roar, swiping his claws at the ambusher. The ambusher didn't have time to draw her sword, so she could only loosen her grip. Her figure flipped, and she instantly retreated 20 or 30 meters, descending like a cloud. She was none other than Yin Yuanxiang. Ling Han! Shui Yanyu exclaimed in shock, and hurriedly caught Ling Han. Tears involuntarily flowed from her eyes. This sword had pierced through Ling Han's body, leaving only the hilt outside. Meanwhile, Jin Zhihui was both furious and shocked, and he roared at Yin Yuanxiang, What are you doing? Only Fu Tian was still sitting on the ground, but it could be felt that his muscles were involuntarily tensing up. Meanwhile, Ling Han stared at Yin Yuanxiang and said in a raspy voice, So you're the true culprit on the ship. Why do you say that? Yin Yuanxiang's previous cautious expression was replaced by one of pride. Her aura also underwent an earth-shattering transformation, instantly rising to the consummate level. Ling Han coughed and his face became even paler. He said, Before Zhou Gaoyang died, he once said that he wasn't the culprit. Yin Yuanxiang's attack had succeeded, so she wasn't in a hurry now. She said, in order to survive, he naturally said whatever he wanted. Ling Han shook his head and said, if he was the culprit, he would have only begged for mercy and not argued that he wasn't the culprit. Yin Yuanxiang was slightly surprised and asked, So you started to suspect me? Indeed. Ling Han nodded and said, I was thinking that since the Dark Knight Hall could send one assassin, why couldn't they send two? One in the open and one in the dark. Yin Yuanxiang hesitated for a moment, then laughed loudly and said, That's right. At this point, there's no need for me to hide anymore. I'm indeed an assassin from the Dark Knight Hall. However, don't even think about buying time. That sword was tainted with lethal poison, and even cultivators at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would die if they were struck by it. Shui Yanyu was astonished. She was confident in Ling Han's recovery ability, but poison was a different matter. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, It's good that you admit it. I was only suspecting before, but now I've finally confirmed it. He straightened his body and released his left arm. However, the sword that had stabbed into his body fell to the ground. As it turned out, the sword hadn't stabbed into his body at all. Instead, it was wedged between his arm and his body. What? Yin Yuanxiang's expression changed drastically, and she said in disbelief, I clearly stabbed your heart. That spot definitely couldn't be wrong unless. She stared at Ling Han and said, Unless you were already prepared and moved the bones in your body. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, Since I suspected that there was an assassin from the Dark Knight Hall here, how could I not be on guard? But why did you suspect me? Yin Yuanxiang was confused and said, I clearly used a secret technique to suppress my cultivation level. Even low-level Sun-Moon tier elites might not be able to pierce through it, to say nothing of you. Ling Han nodded and said, You indeed concealed yourself very well. However, when you were surrounded by the puppets, you still used a power that far surpassed your cultivation level. This made me suspicious and wary. Yin Yuanxiang was stunned. The situation had been so chaotic just then, yet Ling Han still had the leisure to take care of the entire situation. What kind of monster was he? It couldn't be helped. After all, Ling Han's divine sense was far more powerful than ordinary cultivators at the medium extreme. Since I can't kill you with the simple method, I can only use the difficult method. Yin Yuanxiang chuckled coldly. She drew another sword, and a sinister aura radiated from her body. She was an elite at the consummate level. Chapter 1034. Ling Han. Shui Yenyu's worry turned to joy, and she involuntarily hugged Ling Han tightly from behind. She had almost been scared to death just then. Jin Zhihui also breathed a sigh of relief, but his eyes were fixed on Yin Yuanxiang, and it was clear that he was extremely furious. Basically, what everyone hated the most was being betrayed. They had gone through thick and thin together. They had battled snakes, fought pirates, and fought puppets together. It could be said that they had forged a deep bond of friendship. However, Yin Yuanxiang had betrayed them at this time. It was as if a knife had been stabbed in their backs. "Master, let me tear this bitch to pieces," the Azura Demon Emperor requested. Ling Han nodded and said, "Fine, you go." The Azura Demon Emperor roared and immediately pounced toward Yin Yuanxiang. He had been imprisoned for a long time, and now was the time to fight to loosen his muscles and bones. In any case, he was possessing the body of a puppet, so if it broke, he could just change to another one. In any case, his master had plenty of them. He was only afraid of spiritual attacks. Just trash. Yin Yuanxiang raised her sword and attacked. She was really very powerful. Not only was she at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, but she was also at the peak stage of the consummate level. Although she didn't have the ability to fight those at a higher cultivation level, her battle prowess was the best. As the saying went, when there was no tiger in the mountain, the monkey would be king. Otherwise, if Yang Taiching was here, she could only continue to endure. The Azura Demon Emperor was forced back again and finally slid to the feet of Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out his foot and stepped on it, and only then did he stop sliding. "Can you do it or not?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Master, she's a bit strong," the Azura Demon Emperor said with a bitter expression. This puppet bear only had the battle prowess of the late stage of the consummate level. There was a sub-minor level difference, and he was completely suppressed by her. "Haha." Yin Yuanxiang laughed loudly and said, "Who told you to pretend to be kind and righteous? You clearly had a pseudo-Sun Moon tier puppet, yet you discarded it. Hey, you've already used it once, and you still care about using it a second or third time. Keep going. I'll cover you from behind," Ling Han said as he kicked the Azura Demon Emperor. The puppet bear instantly flew into the air and descended toward Yin Yuanxiang. 100 Ghost Sword Technique. Yin Yuanxiang shouted as she brandished her sword. Numerous ghosts actually appeared and charged toward the Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han also sprang into action. He was currently activating the Crimson Ground Locking Net. As long as he could capture Yin Yuanxiang, her battle prowess would drop to the high extreme, and she would be easily captured. "In your dreams." Yin Yuanxiang's figure swam about in an incomparably strange manner, and Ling Han was completely unable to capture her movements. If they were prepared, it would be very difficult for a treasure like the Crimson Ground Locking Net to be effective. "Is that so?" Ling Han smiled faintly and suddenly unleashed the 7-kill subduing soul art. The divine soul attack was invisible, and its speed was ridiculously fast. It was basically impossible to dodge, and one could only take it head-on. It was a competition of the strength of the divine soul of both sides, and which was stronger and more tenacious. Yin Yuanxiang was instantly struck. Her sword momentum faltered, and her figure also faltered for a moment. However, she was at the peak stage of the consummate level, after all, so this momentary lapse in concentration was only a matter of a moment. There was no time for Ling Han to draw her into the Black Tower. In fact, there wasn't even enough time for him to cast the net. However, right at this moment, the Azura Demon Emperor pounced over. He didn't swing his claws to attack. Instead, he gave Yin Yuanxiang a bear hug, a real bear hug. One had to realize that he was only one sub-minor level weaker than Yin Yuanxiang, so this momentary lapse in concentration was more than enough for him to do this. "Master, I've caught her," the Azura Demon Emperor shouted excitedly. This was an elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. When he was at his peak, he could only kneel before such a being. He didn't think that he would be able to match her now. "Let go." Yin Yuanxiang paled in shock. The Azura Demon Emperor was indeed unable to injure her, but Ling Han was activating the Crimson Ground Locking Net. She was even more powerful, and under her full strength, The Azura Demon Emperor's arms began to twist unbelievably. Even his bones were deformed from the strain. If it were a normal living being, they would definitely be screaming in agony. How could they muster any strength under such pain? However, the Azura Demon Emperor didn't feel anything at all. He simply hugged Yin Yuanxiang tightly to buy time for Ling Han. The net spread open, covering them from head to toe. Instantly, Yin Yuanxiang and the Azura Demon Emperor's cultivation level dropped by a minor level. Yin Yuanxiang unleashed her might, and one burst of sword chi after another flew out from her body, slicing at the Azura Demon Emperor. She was stronger than the Azura Demon Emperor in the end, so she naturally had the upper hand. She was able to slice through the Azura Demon Emperor's body until it was a gruesome sight. Fortunately, the puppet bear had been tempered by a secret technique, so its frame was especially sturdy. Otherwise, it would have been reduced to dust long ago. Ling Han drew his bow and activated the ultimate arrow. When the arrow was aimed at her, Yin Yuanxiang instantly felt a chill run down her spine. She felt as if she would definitely die if Ling Han fired this arrow. At this moment, she didn't have the time to think about what kind of archery technique this was or why it was so powerful. There was only one thought left in her mind, and that was to escape from this net. She definitely couldn't allow herself to be hit. Otherwise, she would undoubtedly die. Let go, let go. Yin Yuanxiang's beautiful face was twisted, and she no longer had the allure of a beautiful woman. She was truly going to use all her strength, and she desperately used her origin power and life force to drag the Azura Demon Emperor and the net along as she ran. It had to be said that she was really fast. However, no matter how fast she was, could she compare to the annihilating Dragon Star arrow? Shio. The sharp arrow pierced through the air and shot toward Yin Yuanxiang. Without any suspense, the arrow pierced through the net and struck Yin Yuanxiang's chest. Blood instantly spurted from her wound, and the arrow pierced through her body before striking the puppet bear. The Azura Demon Emperor couldn't help but let go of the bear's arm under the immense force of the impact, and the human and bear finally separated. "Brat, I'm going to kill you." Yin Yuanxiang was just about to shout a threat, but her chest suddenly exploded. Her face was filled with shock, and she lowered her head to look at her heart that had already exploded. A thought flashed through her mind. Wasn't this the explosive arrow created by the Dark Night Hall? How laughable. As an assassin of the Dark Night Hall, she died to a weapon created by her own clan. Was this retribution? She hadn't even finished her thought when her whole body collapsed forward, and her soul dissipated. The Azura Demon Emperor turned into smoke and floated out, saying, "Master, another puppet has been destroyed. First, it was the puppet tiger, and now it was the puppet bear." It hadn't even been a day, and he had already destroyed 2 precious carriers. Ling Han casually tossed out a puppet wolf and said, "It's fine. Change to another one." He put away the crimson ground-locking net. This was an extremely useful treasure before he reached the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. He really had to thank the Luo clan. If Luo Hongdao knew what Ling Han was thinking at this moment, he would definitely be seething with anger. How could it not be useful? Did he know how many generations of the Luo clan's savings had been spent on it? Search this place thoroughly. Don't leave anything behind. It was more refreshing to read on a cell phone. Chapter 1036. Humph. The regulations of heaven and earth here are extremely chaotic, so it's really a good place for a decisive battle, Zhu Yueyun said with a cold chuckle. Ho Yang, if you don't want to die here, then hand that thing over. Ho Yang laughed loudly and said, "Zhu Yueyun, are you trying to scare me? We're both at the peak stage of the low extreme, and our battle prowess can surpass 2 stars. If we were to fight to the death, it's still unknown who would emerge victorious. I only know that if you don't hand that thing over, I'll kill you," Zhu Yueyun said in a menacing voice. "What's the point? This thing can't be opened at all," Ho Yang advised. "Are you going to risk your life and tens of thousands of years of cultivation for an unknown thing?" Zhu Yueyun flared up in rage and said, "You and I discovered that thing together, and we agreed to study it together. However, you took advantage of me and escaped with that thing. If I don't kill you, how can I swallow this humiliation?" Ho Yang chuckled and said, I didn't expect you to be so naive either. No wonder you've always been alone, and you've spent all your time on cultivation. How foolish. That Zhu Yueyun roared in rage, and he immediately attacked. Boom. A terrifying light instantly erupted in the sky, and a series of shock waves surged over. The sea was churned, and waves that were several thousand meters tall rose into the air. They were like mountains crashing into each other. When the king of hell fights, the little brats suffer. Ling Han gritted his teeth. They were far too unlucky. The two heavenly body tier elites had chosen to fight in the sky above them instead of elsewhere. Weren't they just going to be caught in the crossfire? However, now that things had come to this, he could only face them head-on. Ling Han stood at the bow of the ship, and he faced the wind and waves with his sword in hand. When a huge wave crashed over, he roared loudly and slashed out with his sword. He forcefully slashed open a crack in the wave, allowing their ship to pass through. Shwa shwa shwa. He continued to slash out with his sword. The wave was far too thick, and he could only slash out a crack that was 30 meters deep. He had to continuously use his sword to slash through it. Finally, the boat passed through the big wave. Ling Han was so tired that he could barely lift his hands. This seawater was extremely strange. A single drop was as heavy as a mountain, so how terrifying would a wave be when it crashed over like this? Moreover, this wave was created by an elite of the heavenly body tier, so it naturally contained a sliver of the might of the heavenly body tier. It was already very rare for Ling Han to be able to dispel it, so it would be strange if he wasn't exhausted. Boom boom boom, but before Ling Han could even catch his breath, he saw rows and rows of waves surge up one after another, crashing towards them. A quick count revealed that there were at least a few hundred waves. Ling Han wanted to give up, and directly stored the boat into the Black Tower. He and Shui Yanyu would first hide in the sea, and when the battle in the sky was over, they would swim back to the surface of the sea, draw out the boat, and start sailing again. However, how rare was a battle between heavenly body tiers? Observing it would definitely be of great help to his own cultivation. Therefore, Ling Han gritted his teeth and endured. He continued to unleash 10,000 techniques return to one, slashing apart the waves. Fortunately, his cultivation level had improved greatly, and so had his power. Though the power of 10,000 techniques return to one had decreased considerably, the consumption of his power had also decreased considerably, so he could continue to endure. Of course, more importantly, it was still his powerful physique and astonishing stamina. Otherwise, in such a high-intensity battle, ordinary mountain river tier cultivators would have long since become numb, unable to even lift their arms. But Ling Han still persisted, and in this kind of battle, his willpower was fully tempered, causing his fighting spirit to soar. There was a kind of heroism that he could battle even against a heavenly body tier elite. However, the two elites in the sky were also becoming more and more enraged as they fought, and they were both fighting for real. Layers of dark clouds rolled over, blocking out the sun, and in another moment, the sky was filled with fiery clouds, as if they wanted to burn the sky into ashes, and even the sea was about to be boiled. The heavenly body tier was really too strong. Ling Han only felt that he was like an ant in front of this kind of power. No, he was even inferior to an ant. If either of these two people wanted to kill him, they didn't even need to move, and could kill him with a single look. Power. This is true power. Ling Han yearned in his heart, and he felt his whole body become excited. He couldn't see the battle in the sky at all, as the two elites flew into the sky and dove into the ground, unleashing their full battle prowess. The sky was burning, and the sea was boiling. This was practically hell on earth. Fortunately, the two elites had already moved far away from their original positions as they battled. Otherwise, with the intensity of this battle, the shockwaves from their battle definitely wouldn't be something that Ling Han could deal with. Boom! Under the sea, an incredibly thick pillar of light suddenly soared into the sky. It shot into the sky, and it could probably be clearly seen from thousands of kilometers away. Zhu Yueyun, we fought our way to an ancient ruin, Ho Yang said with a smile. Why don't you go down and explore it? I won't fight with you over it. Bullshit, that's only a residence of a sun-moon tier elite. How can it compare to that chest? Zhu Yueyun angrily rebuked. In any case, it can't be opened, so it has no value at all. Then why are you keeping it? Give it to me. I like these kinds of strange things. Scram. The two of them battled fiercely again, and this time, the commotion was even greater. Blood spilled from both of them, instantly dyeing the sky red. It transformed into a boundless rain of blood that was filled with a terrifying killing intent. The creatures in the sea were all extremely unlucky, and they were directly killed by this rain of blood. This was the blood of a heavenly body tier elite. Just a single drop was like a meteor crashing into the sea. It was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han had naturally already drawn Shui Yanyu and the ship into the Black Tower. He himself also hid in the Black Tower, drifting along with the waves. He was swept into the sea at one moment, and then lifted into the sky at the next. The Black Tower was like a mustard seed, and even supergravity couldn't affect it. In other words, it was impervious to all techniques, and the regulations here were completely ineffective against it. Shio. A speck of light descended from the sky. Ling Han's eyes were sharp, and he immediately discovered that it was a white jade chest. With a thud, it fell into the sea, and then quickly sank. Is this the treasure that the two heavenly body tier elites are fighting over? He couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. He naturally couldn't snatch the treasure from the hands of heavenly body tier elites, yet this treasure had been sent flying. This gave him a chance. However, it was a little far away. Without waiting for Ling Han to exit the Black Tower, he saw two figures descend from the sky almost at the same time. They dove into the water and quickly chased after that jade chest. As they chased, they were still battling, both wanting to be in front. However, the gravity here was too strong, and the jade chest sank very quickly. Ling Han very soon lost sight of the chest, and the two elites also instantly disappeared before his eyes. The Black Tower floated and sank, and no one knew. Ling Han's mind raced, and he finally made up his mind. He suddenly appeared from the Black Tower, and suddenly, a terrifying gravity assaulted him, immediately pulling him down to the bottom of the sea. This was exactly what he wanted. Chapter 1037. It would be best if he could obtain that jade box. If he couldn't, Ling Han also wanted to explore the place where the light beam came from. After hearing about the Star Sea's history, Ling Han was very interested in the bottom of the sea. With his good luck, he might be able to find treasures or inheritances from outside the galaxy. The two elites had also said that the light beam was the reappearance of a sun-moon tier's abode, which was why such a phenomenon occurred. They weren't interested, but Ling Han was. He would find the jade box first, and then explore the abode. 30 meters, 300 meters, several thousand meters. Ling Han continued to sink deeper and deeper into the sea. As he sank deeper and deeper, the light in the surroundings also became dimmer and dimmer. However, unlike other regions of the sea, this place was only dimmer, but there was still light all along. This was because the gravity here was too strong, causing the refraction of light to undergo an unbelievable change. It went down layer by layer, unable to refract back to the surface. And Ling Han also felt the pressure. The water pressure was too terrifying. There was an inexplicable rule here. If you scooped up the seawater, you would find that there was nothing strange about the seawater, but once you entered the sea, each drop of seawater was as heavy as a mountain. With the power of the mountain river tier, you could easily hold up a few large mountains, but each drop of seawater was as heavy as a mountain. That was too terrifying. More importantly, the deeper you sank, the heavier the water pressure. It was no longer a problem of mountains, but practically a star. When cultivators fell into the sea, they had to put up an origin power shield, or they would be crushed into a bloody mess. No wonder no one could stay in the sea for a long time, because origin power would eventually be exhausted, and when that time came, it would be a dead end. At first, Ling Han thought that even if he sank to the bottom, he would be able to walk to the shore after a few years, but now that he thought about it, he was too naive. Of course, Ling Han was no ordinary person. His physique was too strong, at least for now, he could still resist. However, his bones were already making explosive cracking sounds, obviously under great pressure. Secondly, he still had the Black Tower, so even if his origin power was exhausted, he could hide in it to recover. When they reached a depth of 10,000 feet, the place finally turned into darkness. 1001, 2002, 3003. Ling Han was still sinking. If others were to find out about this, they would definitely turn pale with fright. Although everyone came to the sea area to search for the lost treasure, they would usually only search in the shallow sea and the middle sea. The limit was 3,000 feet. Beyond this depth, it was called the deep sea. The deep sea was far too dangerous. Merely the water pressure alone was enough to cause the majority of mountain river tier cultivators to collapse. Moreover, there were terrifying demonic beasts in such deep waters, and they could easily take your life at any moment. In such an environment, how much strength can a martial artist display? 1,600, 1,700, 1,008. When Ling Han descended to a depth of 2,000 zhang, his surroundings actually lit up. Those were the fish in the sea. The scales on their bodies actually glowed. When they swam together in a group, it seemed as though the surrounding space was lit up. It was bizarre and dazzling. 2,500, 2,800. At this point, even Ling Han's godly bones couldn't hold on any longer. He had to circulate his origin power to resist the pressure, but his origin power was being expended at an abnormally fast pace. He took out a true origin stone and absorbed it as he resisted the pressure. 3,000 zhang finally, Ling Han sank to the bottom of the sea. The seabed wasn't flat. Instead, it was like a mountainous region, full of ups and downs. Many rocks were also glowing, just like those fish from before. This was a magnificent world. If it weren't for the fact that the water pressure was too great, Ling Han really wanted to summon Shui Yanyu and admire this beautiful scenery together. Unfortunately, Shui Yanyu didn't have a physique like his, and she was only at the peak stage of the low extreme. It was impossible for her to resist such terrifying pressure. If she came out, she would be directly crushed into a bloody pulp. In the distance, there was a dazzling beam of light. Even though he was very far away, he could still see it clearly. It was that sun-moon tier abode. Ling Han didn't hesitate and swam in the direction of the beam of light. As for that jade box, he could only rely on his luck. Because the two heavenly body tier elites had come down before him, with their abilities, they had definitely searched a few rounds. If they should find it, they would definitely have found it. Thus, he could only leave it to fate. If the heavens favored him, who knew, maybe that jade box would appear at his feet. He walked with difficulty. At the bottom of the sea, his speed dropped to rock bottom. His clumsy appearance would make anyone want to laugh. Just like that, he slowly advanced. On the surface of the sea, he would only need about 10 minutes to complete the journey, but he spent almost half a day. Finally, a stretch of ruins appeared in front of him, but a dazzling light exploded from a corner. This should be a mountain gate, right? He could clearly see that this should have been a mountain, but now the majority of the mountain peak had been shaved off, and more of it had sunk to the bottom of the sea. There was very little part of it that was submerged in water. In the middle of the mountain stood a stone pillar. It was at least 30 meters thick and 300 meters tall, and it was this stone pillar that was emitting such a dazzling light. And beside the stone pillar, there was a cave entrance, from which a faint light leaked out. However, because the stone pillar was really too dazzling, this cave appeared very dim in comparison. Ling Han swam over, wanting to enter the cave to explore, but suddenly a wave crashed over, and a giant shark shockingly appeared in front of him. There were circles of golden patterns on its body. Golden patterned shark, an existence at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. This golden patterned shark also discovered Ling Han, and a sneer actually appeared on its face. Having reached the height of the mountain river tier, demonic beasts naturally had long since developed intelligence. In its eyes, Ling Han was naturally so weak that he wasn't even worth mentioning. However, with a shake of its tail, it swam over like an arrow, opened its giant mouth, and bit at Ling Han. With a crack, it closed its mouth, but a confused expression appeared on its face because it didn't bite anything in its mouth. This insignificant human had disappeared. It circled around the surroundings, and finally gave up on the idea of continuing to search, and instead swam towards the cave entrance. It had also been attracted by this pillar of light. However, the clash between the two heavenly body tier elites had scared it to the point of wetting its pants, so how would it dare to run out? Only when it didn't discover the two powerful auras for a long time did it gather its courage and swim over. There were many creatures that had the same idea as it. A tortoise, a crab, a seahorse, and an octopus appeared one after another. The strength of these demonic beasts should be about the same, so they didn't start fighting. Instead, after facing each other for a while, they all communicated with their divine sense and entered the cave one after another. After entering, these demonic beasts all exclaimed in surprise because there was actually no water in the cave, but rather an extremely dry space. Chapter 1038. This is the abode of a human almighty, the tortoise said. No, 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 this should be a mountain gate, but most of the area has been destroyed, leaving only this place, the seahorse said. It must be an important place for treasures, the other demonic beasts said in unison. Both of them used their divine senses to communicate, so they skipped the language barrier and could communicate directly. Human treasures might not be useful to us, the crab said. He was a ghost-faced crab. On his shell was a pattern that looked like a malicious spirit. Right now, he was in human form, but his pair of large pincers still maintained their original appearance. To demonic beasts, their bodies were divine weapons. This was a gift from the heavens. Of course, they didn't mind having a few more high-level divine weapons. Hee, then you can leave. I don't mind using the human race's treasures, the large prawn said. He was a black armored prawn, and his entire body was pitch black. His carapace was incredibly hard, and it was comparable to godly metal of the same level. He had also transformed into a human form, and his body was covered in a thick layer of black armor, which was formed from his carapace. This was a residence built by humans, so it was not suitable for their huge bodies. Moreover, it was not an aquatic environment, so it was naturally most suitable for them to transform into human form. Ghost-faced Crab snorted coldly and said, I don't need you to tell me what to do. All right. There might be hidden dangers here. Let's find the treasures first before deciding how to split them. Octopus said. She was the only female. She had gray hair that was combed into dozens of braids. But upon closer inspection, each braid was actually a feeler, gently waving about. Gray Cloud Seal, all right, let's see if there are any treasures here. The sea demons reached a consensus and started searching. Too much time has passed. Many things have turned into ashes. Damn it. This is the constellation Illusion Spirit Grass, a level 5 godly medicine. As long as there's enough of it, I can use it to break through to the Sun-Moon tier. This is a miraculous light stone. It can be used to refine divine bones. It's a pity that it's already turned to ash. Otherwise, it would be able to increase the defensive power of my armor by a whole realm. Heavens, this is the 4 Emperor Pill. These sea demons continuously released cries of alarm and misery. They were shocked at how many treasures were hidden here and how precious they were. However, they also felt incomparable heartache, because they had all turned into ashes, not a single one remaining intact. This treasure room was divided into many small rooms. They searched through them one by one until they came to the last room. There was only a single stone there. It was extremely ordinary. This was the first reaction of the sea demons. It was really too ordinary, without the slightest bit of luster. It was the kind of existence that no one would take a second look at if it was thrown on the ground. But the problem was, to be able to be placed in the treasure room, could it really be ordinary? However, the treasures in the other rooms were all at the Sun-Moon tier, yet it just so happened to be an ordinary-looking stone in this room. Who wouldn't be suspicious? What exactly is this thing? The sea demons were all curious. Let's study it first. There's no need to fight before we know how to use it, said Ghostface Crab. But all the demons gathered around. Because they had already reached a consensus, no one dared to make a move. Otherwise, they would become the target of everyone else. But this stone was really very ordinary, and it was very irregular, as if it had been knocked off from some big rock. They knocked on it a few times, touched it a few times, but there was no reaction. They attacked, but this time, all of their expressions changed. That was because when their attacks landed, it was as if they were hitting air. There was actually no effect, and it didn't even budge in the slightest. Though I don't know what other uses this stone has, merely its ability to absorb attacks is too frightening, the gray cloud octopus said in shock. This stone slab was not as simple as being tough. Rather, it could absorb attacks, and this was the most terrifying aspect of it. All the sea demons looked greedy. Even if this stone slab had no other uses, merely its ability to absorb attacks was already nature-defying. Shwa. In that instant, a few hands grabbed at the stone slab at the same time. Now that they knew that the stone slab had the ability to absorb attacks, they naturally all wanted to obtain it. When the time came, with the stone slab's protection, their defenses would definitely increase by a few times. All of you get lost. It's mine. These sea demons all roared, and then began to fight. This was naturally a chaotic battle. Every sea demon's goal was to snatch the stone slab, and they had no intention of killing their enemies. However, as long as there was a chance to snatch the stone slab, they would immediately be surrounded and attacked. Thus, even if there was a sea demon here that was slightly stronger, they would not be able to gain the upper hand in such a chaotic situation. But at this moment, that golden-patterned shark's body suddenly exploded. This gave the other sea demons a fright. What was going on? No one had used any killing moves against him, so how did he suddenly die? At this moment, they saw a figure appear, already grabbing at that stone slab. It was Ling Han. Previously, he did not linger at all, and directly entered the Black Tower, but was swallowed by the golden-patterned shark along with the seawater. Just now, he appeared from the Black Tower, and used his full power, instantly smashing the golden-patterned shark into pieces. Even if it was a demonic beast, its organs were still extremely soft. Human. Damn it. The other sea demons were all shocked and furious. Though they belonged to different races and definitely could not be considered friendly with each other, most of them would even attack each other, they were all sea demons, and when encountering an external enemy, they would naturally unite against a common enemy. Moreover, Ling Han still wanted to snatch the stone slab. They all attacked together, using octopus tentacles, prawn crab claws, and tortoise claws, all of them attacking Ling Han. He was only in the early stage of the medium extreme, so he was completely insignificant. Though they did not know what method he had used to kill the golden-patterned shark, there definitely would not be a second time. Their attacks all landed on Ling Han's back. 5 attacks simultaneously blasted over, all of them at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Most likely, any medium extreme would be smashed to pieces. However, though Ling Han spat out a mouthful of blood, his figure accelerated, and he grabbed the stone slab in his hand. What? The 5 sea demons were all stunned. How was this possible? He was merely in the medium extreme, so to say nothing of their combined attacks, just one of them was enough to smash this human into pieces. How was it that he only spat out a mouthful of blood? It was said that the physique of demonic beasts was tough, but looking at it now, this human was more like a demonic beast. Ling Han landed, and only managed to steady himself after staggering a few steps. He felt a searing pain on his back. Though he possessed a physique on the level of level 3 godly metal, being attacked by the battle prowess of 5 consummate level cultivators at the same time still made him feel incredibly uncomfortable. He couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood, and then he spat out another 2 mouthfuls of blood, and only then did he feel slightly better. It really fucking hurts, Ling Han said in his mind. However, this stone slab was finally in his possession. Even if a heavenly body tier came, he would not worry that it would be snatched away by him. Sorry, I'll be taking this. Chapter 1040. If Pei Ji was still at his peak, even if he couldn't dodge this arrow, he would at least be able to avoid his vitals. However, he was ganged up on by the 5 great demonic beast elites, and was already heavily injured, his battle prowess dropping greatly, so how could he dodge this arrow? He patted his chest somewhat blankly, then pointed at Ling Han, and said, "Brat, I'll definitely tear you to pieces." But before the words tear left his mouth, his chest suddenly exploded, and he would never be able to utter the last word. His face filled with unwillingness, he collapsed onto the ground with a loud bang, blood flowing all over the ground. This treasure trove was obviously extremely sturdy. The previous battle didn't damage it in the slightest, and now, the blood of a mountain river tier cultivator naturally couldn't damage it, either. 10,000 Shadows clone technique? Ling Han said randomly, and he entered the Black Tower. Damn it! The 4 great demonic beasts were all enraged. Previously, they had been tricked by Ling Han, and now they had allowed him to slip away for no rhyme or reason. This made them feel extremely embarrassed. What kind of movement technique is this? Why is it so strange? We've really been tricked. This old human dog isn't in cahoots with that puppy, but enemies. Damn it, we've been used, or else without us, that puppy definitely couldn't have killed the old dog. We've been tricked. The 5 demonic beasts were all furious, but now that Ling Han had disappeared without a trace, they could only howl helplessly. After being angry for a while, they left on their own. The strange phenomenon here was shocking, and it might attract even stronger demonic beasts, and by then, they might be fated to be devoured. Ling Han also exited the Black Tower, leaving the treasure trove, and then drifted with the flow. He once again entered the Black Tower, and began to study that mysterious stone slab. Small Tower, do you know what this is? Small Tower's figure appeared. It shook lightly and said, "This is a primordial stone." Ling Han only asked with the mentality of trying, and didn't think that Small Tower would really know, causing him to be startled for a moment, and then said, "Be more specific." Small Tower humphed, and then said, "At the beginning of the world, this was the most ancient batch of stones, and was derived from the primal chaos source rock." Ling Han knew about the primal chaos source rock. Back when he was still in the lower realm, he had obtained a large piece, and the Azura Demon Emperor could not forget about it. He had even heavily tricked him. "Then it must be an incredible treasure," he said excitedly. "I'm sorry, other than being slightly older and sturdier, the primordial stone doesn't have any special abilities. It's only used to record historical data." Small Tower immediately countered. Ling Han was instantly disappointed. He had risked being beaten up to snatch something back, but it couldn't even be called a treasure. "Wait a minute." Ling Han immediately said, "That's not right. This stone is impervious to all kinds of energy and can absorb all kinds of energy. How could it be possible to carve words on it?" Since it is impervious to all powers, then why was it shattered?" Small Tower countered. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Even if it's the primordial stone, there is a limit to the attacks it can absorb. When the power exceeds this limit, even the primordial stone can only shatter." "You're worth teaching." Small Tower flaunted its seniority. However, the Black Tower had existed for who knew how many tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of millions of years, so it indeed had the right to flaunt its seniority. Though the primordial stone isn't a treasure, because of its very long history, many people use it as a monument to praise the merits of their ancestors. It can also be considered a relatively rare item, Small Tower continued. Ling Han sighed, and said, "Though I feel good about myself, I'm not arrogant enough to build a monument for myself. This thing, I'll use it as a shield." "Oh, right, what kind of power is needed to break it?" "The power of creation can break it," Small Tower answered. Ling Han glared and said, "Then wouldn't it be the Genesis tier?" Small Tower did not answer, as if it felt that this question was very idiotic. It was completely too lazy to answer. "Then this shield is really useful. Unfortunately, it's too small." Ling Han appeared to be somewhat satisfied, because the function of this stone slab was to completely absorb attacks, and if used well, it could bring out a miraculous effect. But because it was too small, if it encountered a powerful demonic beast that directly used its hill-like body to ram over, it would be useless and completely unable to protect it. If it encountered an elite that punched out, or even turned into a star, it would also be completely ineffective. "It depends on how I use it." Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and instantly, a terrifying water pressure attacked. He tried to use the primordial stone, and it was really effective. Wherever it was placed, the pressure would completely disappear. Unfortunately, it could only protect an area the size of a palm. Ling Han simply used it as a heart-protecting mirror. The heart, brain, and dantian, these were the three biggest vital points of a cultivator. The first two could be fatal, and the dantian was the source of power. If it was destroyed, then it was equivalent to being a cripple. He began to float towards the surface of the sea. Because of the powerful gravity, buoyancy seemed to have completely disappeared, and the speed at which he floated was very slow. The waves surged, and suddenly a huge demonic beast appeared in front of him. It was a giant crocodile with 6 legs. It was more than 900 meters long, and its whole body was covered with scales that were even larger than a manhole cover. Merely its tail was more than 300 meters long. Ling Han could sense it, and that was because its 2 eyes were shining like fireballs. At the same time, he also felt an indescribable pressure. Sun Moon Tear, the giant crocodile, also discovered him and immediately swung its tail. Its figure sped up, and it opened its mouth to bite at him. Ling Han did not have the slightest bit of hope, and directly hid into the Black Tower. If this giant mouth bit down, it was not something that the primordial stone could block at all. Perhaps only his heart could remain intact, and the other parts of his body would become rotten flesh. With a crack, the giant crocodile closed its mouth, but there was a hint of confusion in its eyes because it did not bite anything at all. The sea surged. This time, the Black Tower was not swallowed by the giant crocodile because there was a huge gap between its teeth. The Black Tower had long since surged out with the water, and was instantly pushed several hundred meters away by the strong current. The Sun Moon Tear was really too powerful. Ling Han sighed in the Black Tower. If he encountered an existence in the consummate level of the Mountain River Tier, even if he was no match for them, he would still be able to put up a fight. For example, he had been surrounded by 5 demonic beasts in the consummate level of the Mountain River Tier, yet he had only spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. However, he believed that if he was bitten by this giant crocodile, he would be crushed into a bloody pulp in an instant. The difference in strength was just too great. The crocodile was obviously frowning. At its level, its intelligence was completely developed. It was no different from a human. It was just that it didn't want to transform into a human in the deep sea. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between it and a human. A mere Mountain River Tier cultivator actually managed to dodge its bite. Strange. Chapter 1041. The giant crocodile swam nearby for a while, but eventually shook its powerful tail, and with a surge of hidden waves, it left. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and was just about to float back to the surface of the sea when he suddenly felt a sense of danger, and immediately entered the Black Tower again. That giant crocodile actually charged over without a sound, and launched a fierce attack on him. So sinister, so cunning. Ling Han shook his head. He definitely couldn't underestimate it because it was a crocodile. To be able to cultivate to the Sun Moon Tier, how many tens of thousands of years had this crocodile lived? A shattering void tier demonic beast had completely developed intelligence, and from then on, it had experienced so many years, so its intelligence definitely wouldn't be lower than any human sage. Underestimating it was completely seeking death. But with the giant crocodile's pounce, it caused the seawater to surge violently. The Black Tower wouldn't be affected by the special gravity here, and it naturally moved under the influence of the water. How powerful was the power of the Sun Moon Tier? And just now, the giant crocodile's deliberate pounce brought about really was very powerful, pushing the Black Tower far away. In a few breaths' time, it had drifted over a dozen miles. Ling Han waited for a while, and when he felt that the sea was calm, he exited the Black Tower. He had just floated up for a short while when a terrifying feeling attacked again. He hurriedly hid in the Black Tower again. Sure enough, that giant crocodile appeared again. Why did this beast not let him go? Ling Han was speechless. Had this giant crocodile discovered that his disappearance was too abnormal, and realized that he had an incredible treasure on him? If you want to follow, then follow. I'll go and get intimate with my wife first, you wait slowly. He simply went to find Shui Yanyu, and tormented this seductive beauty until her ears were red, repeatedly calling him a pervert, but also enjoying it. Her phoenix-like eyes were like spring water, exuding a seductive charm, causing Ling Han's appetite to rise. At this time, he didn't have time to pay attention to the giant crocodile outside, and didn't notice that under the effect of the water, the Black Tower was actually swept into a strait. This strait was unfathomably deep, and below it was endless darkness. The giant crocodile had swum here before, but it immediately swung its tail and ran away in fear. If Ling Han had noticed this detail, perhaps he would have immediately appeared from the Black Tower. No matter what, he would not have allowed the Black Tower to fall, but now he was completely unaware of it. He allowed the water currents to surge and bring him down into the endless abyss. Ling Han and Shui Yanyu continued to flirt with each other to pass the time, causing the huge crocodile to grow impatient and leave on its own. He left the Black Tower. Damn. He felt as if all the bones in his body were about to explode. Immediately, crackling sounds could be heard. How did this happen? Ling Han didn't understand. The water pressure here was extremely frightening. He had known this long ago, but he definitely didn't think that it had reached such a ridiculous level. Even if he channeled his origin power, it was useless. In an instant, over a dozen of his bones were crushed, and some even turned into powder. Can't hold on, he immediately entered into the Black Tower, and then circulated the indestructible Heaven Scroll. His bones began to heal, and after about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, he had completely recovered. Why did the pressure suddenly become so great? Ling Han observed from inside the Black Tower, but it was completely dark here, and the surrounding environment was completely different from before. Ahead, there was a faint flicker of light. Shit, I wonder where the undercurrent brought by the giant crocodile has brought me. Ling Han was speechless. Previously, he was only concerned with flirting with Shui Yanyu, and completely did not notice the changes in the environment, and was actually brought to such a dangerous place. The water pressure is so terrifying. I'm afraid that in the time of a breath, all the bones in my body will be crushed. How am I supposed to float to the surface of the sea? Doesn't that mean that I'm going to be trapped in this place forever? Wait, there's something ahead that's glowing. Perhaps it can turn the situation around. At this time, Ling Han could only treat a dead horse as a living one. He immediately came out of the Black Tower, raised his palm, and after stirring up the flow of water, he hurriedly hid in the Black Tower again, letting the Black Tower float by itself towards the place where the light was shining. This was naturally very slow, and the water was not listening to him, often drifting in the wrong direction. Thus, the speed at which he approached the glowing spot was very slow. However, no matter how slow it was, he was still approaching, and after less than half a day, Ling Han finally saw the glowing spot clearly. It was actually a chest made of jade, and it itself was exuding a milky white light. It was that chest. Ling Han immediately recognized it. It was the treasure chest that Zhu Liyun and Ho Yang had been fighting over. Unexpectedly, neither of them had succeeded, and the chest had actually fallen into such a place. Is this considered luck, or misfortune? Ling Han scratched his head. If he was lucky, how had he fallen into such a predicament? It seemed like he was in a hopeless situation. If he was unlucky, the treasure that two great elites of the heavenly body tier were fighting over was actually not far from him. Who cares if it's lucky or unlucky? Let's get the treasure first. Otherwise, it's definitely misfortune. Ling Han used the same trick and floated towards the chest. He slowly approached it. Finally, he was only a hand's length away from it. Ling Han's figure flashed out of the Black Tower, and he stretched out his hand to grab the chest. He was just about to return into the Black Tower, but right at this moment he saw a black gas also spread out. It was actually hidden under the jade chest before, and now it was like an octopus spreading its tentacles, wrapping around Ling Han. All of a sudden, a strong sense of danger rose up in Ling Han's heart. He felt that if he were to be entangled by this thing, it would definitely be even worse than being slapped by an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. He hurriedly hid in the Black Tower, and the black gas actually followed him like a shadow, tightly sticking to the jade chest. Shwa, it also followed him into the Black Tower. Moreover, the speed at which the black gas spread was too fast, and it had already wrapped around Ling Han's hand. An incredibly chaotic thought rushed into Ling Han, causing him to completely lose his rationality. It was as if he were about to go crazy. Duo. Small tower appeared and exclaimed softly at him. The black-colored chi was like mist that had been blown away and instantly turned into millions of strands. However, it was also very tenacious, and a strand of black chi stuck to Ling Han's hand all the way, tunneling into his body. More and more, and the whole black gas was shrinking, surging into Ling Han's body. Boom! A scene of a battle rose up in Ling Han's mind. Two great elites were currently battling in the galaxy, and when they struck out, even the stars in the distance were shattered, and the sun lost its radiance forever. He was shocked. What level of elite was this? Genesis tier? On the two sides of the battle, on one side was an old man with golden skin. He was very fat and his face was full of smiles. He also had a round belly, and his earlobes were unusually large, actually touching his shoulders. Meanwhile, his head was completely bald. This made Ling Han recall a pirate he had encountered before. He was clearly a homicidal maniac, but when he channeled his cultivation technique, he actually had a dignified air. The feeling this old man gave him was also the same. He was incredibly holy, and also had a great benevolence that could deliver all living beings from the afterlife. Chapter 1042. On the other side of the battle was a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was bare-chested, and his muscles bulged, but what was unusual was that there were divine patterns on his skin. They didn't seem to be made of skin, but some kind of metal. Not only that, there were a dozen sharp spikes on his back, all growing out of his spine. Each spike was over 2 feet long, and it was very terrifying. His whole body was surrounded by black gas, which made Ling Han feel a sense of familiarity. Demonic chi, that's right, it was demonic chi. This man was a great elite of the netherworld, and the old man with golden body was obviously from the immortal realm. This was a battle between the strongest elites of the two realms. They fought, and their figures could change at will. Sometimes, they were only the size of a normal person, but sometimes they were hundreds of millions of meters tall. With a stretch of their hand, they could casually grab a nearby star and smash it towards the other. As the two fought, the nearby galaxy was completely ruined, and a dazzling light lit up the dark universe. Ling Han's scalp was numb. A star was destroyed, and the regulations of heaven and earth collided. That kind of destructive power was destructive, and even heavenly body tier elites would be insta-killed. However, this kind of impact didn't affect the two at all. They fought in this kind of great destruction, causing even more destruction. But in the end, the man from the netherworld was no match. He was hit by a powerful move, and his body was sent flying, directly smashing a star. He stuck to a broken piece of the star, and streaked towards the depths of the universe. This powerful move directly caused his physical body to collapse, and his divine sense was also destroyed. Theoretically, he was definitely dead. He and this piece of star floated in the universe for who knew how long, and finally crashed into a planet, turning a plane into a sea. Star Sealing Han finally understood. In the past, there had been a battle between two supreme elites, and one was defeated or even killed. His body, along with a fragment of the continent, smashed onto the joint peace planet. This was the origin of the Star Sea. However, no one knew that the one fighting was actually a great elite of the netherworld. Genesis tier? Ling Han hadn't finished his thought when he saw a wave of chaos, filling him with killing intent. He wanted to kill everyone in this world. This was the will of the great being from the netherworld. He must have died a long time ago, but even if such an existence only left behind a fragment of his will, it could still affect those who came after him. Now, this demonic chi was controlling Ling Han's mind, wanting to erase his nature and make him fall into the devil. Ling Han humphed. If they were in the outside world, he might have been affected, but now, this was inside the Black Tower. Genesis tier was indeed the strongest force in this world, but who knew how many years this elite of the netherworld had died, so how much might could he still possess? Ling Han extracted the power of the Black Tower to fight against the demonic chi. This was not the first time. Back in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, he had resisted the demonic chi of the Azura Demon Emperor. Of course, compared to this demonic chi, the Azura Demon Emperor was practically trash. However, his strength had also undergone an earth-shattering change compared to that time, and the might of the Black Tower had also been unleashed many times over. This was still not enough to suppress you? Ling Han continued to wear down the demonic qi. The violent, chaotic, and bloodthirsty factors were all erased, and only the purest essence remained, sinking into Ling Han's dantian. At first, it was only a dot, and then it became a ball, but it was not much bigger than an egg. Shockingly, this essence was filled with energy, and could be absorbed by the mountains and rivers. Ling Han immediately discovered that his second great mountain was growing at an astonishing speed. Going by this trend, he would be able to reach the middle stage of the medium extreme in about a month's time, approaching the late stage, and form a second great river from there. This was too shocking. It should be known that the advancement of each minor level in the mountain river tier would take tens of thousands of years. Only the descendants of heavenly body tier elites like Zhao Lun and Sha Yuan could obtain such a frightening amount of resources and complete such accumulation in a short few hundred years. But what about Ling Han? Going by this speed, he might only need a few years to reach the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. No need to be surprised. This is the lifetime essence of a demon master. Small Tower suddenly spoke up. Though the demon master Ling Han had long since expected this, he was still shocked. Demon masters were equivalent to the saints of the immortal realm, and were both beings of the Genesis tier. The demon master's consciousness and physical body have long been destroyed, but Genesis tiers are too powerful, and even a portion of his corpse can exist for hundreds of millions of years, affecting the sea region. Small Tower said. Ling Han nodded. It was precisely because of the mischief caused by the remains of the demon master that this sea region was affected, producing an incredibly shocking gravity. In truth, that was a kind of power of regulations. When Genesis tier level elites affected the regulations of heaven and earth, who could not be affected? No wonder that the cave on the Earth's core island would waft out demonic qi. It should be connected to this sea region. Ling Han looked inside his dantian, and the last of the demon master's essence had turned into a black ball, so black that it made one's heart palpitate, and endless energy was currently being emitted through the ball, nourishing his physical body and increasing his cultivation level. This was happening all the time, and going by this trend, it was enough for him to reach the Sun-Moon tier. Of course, this was the essence of a demon master's entire life. So what was strange about raising Ling Han to the Sun-Moon tier? On the contrary, if it was not for the fact that too much time had passed, and a large portion of the essence had already dissipated, this could even raise Ling Han to the heavenly body tier, or even the eternal river tier. Thankfully, this power of essence is emitted bit by bit, or I would have exploded from the overload. A sliver of fear rose up in Ling Han. To be able to raise his cultivation level to the Sun-Moon tier in a short period of time, what terrifying power was this? And this ball of power was staying in his body like a time bomb, really making him feel on edge. However, the most important thing is not the rapid increase in cultivation level, but rather the regulations of heaven and earth comprehended by the demon master, the regulations of heaven and earth of the netherworld. As long as I reach the corresponding level, I will be able to comprehend the regulations of the immortal realm and the netherworld at the same time, and this is the most terrifying part. But I heard that the two realms oppose each other and are incompatible. Don't fail to fuse the regulations of the two realms, and instead cause yourself to go mad, and the regulations of the two realms will clash and kill you. Forget it, this is something that will happen after I advance to the Genesis tier, and I'll think about it later. According to what you said, the reason why this star sea has such great gravity is because of the existence of this demon master. Now that the demon master's essence has been absorbed by me, isn't this sea no different from an ordinary sea? I can leave here. TSK, my luck is indeed good. When opening the sky, I received the blessing of heaven and earth. It was definitely not just for show. And, with a thought, Ling Han, the demonic power source in his dantian. This was the name he gave to the ball of demon master's essence. After all, essence was essence, and it made him feel strangely tainted. Immediately, wisps of demonic qi spread out, and his aura immediately changed. Black gas rose all over his body, as if he had transformed into a demon. "Ha, I can pretend to be someone from the netherworld now. Let Azura Demon Emperor come, and see if there are any flaws." Ling Han broke into a smile. Chapter 1044. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to leave, and decided to practice his sword techniques in the Black Tower. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, breaking the rules is why I can increase my speed infinitely, and my opponent can't block my sword strike at all. Ling Han murmured as he flew out and slashed with his sword. He dashed out, his sword flashing like lightning, but he immediately felt pain in his left leg. When he looked down, he was shocked to find that his left leg was still in its original position. His ankle was broken, and a small part of it was twisted into a fried dough twist. Hiss! This is the consequence of breaking the rules. Ling Han's lips twitched, and he hurriedly put his left leg back, channeling the indestructible heaven scroll to heal the wound. I've gone astray. Although my speed has increased, the damage to my body is even greater. However, this is also because I'm in the Black Tower, and my power can be amplified infinitely. Otherwise, if I were outside, I definitely couldn't damage my bones to such an extent with my own power. I can't practice here, I still have to go out. Ling Han left the Black Tower, and immediately found that the crushing water pressure had disappeared. It wasn't quite right to say that it had disappeared. There was naturally water pressure in the deep sea, but this pressure was like a drizzle to him now, and couldn't shake his godly bones at all. That means I can also use my flight god tool. Ling Han took out the cloud-piercing shuttle, and under his control, sure enough, the shuttle broke through the waves, and in a few breaths' time, broke through the surface of the sea and shot into the sky. As expected, Ling Han summoned Shui Yanyu, and told this seductive beauty everything that had happened just now. Invincible Sword Saint Shui Yanyu's expression was blank. She obviously hadn't heard of this name. True, there were only heavenly body tier elites on Joint Peace Planet at present. Perhaps in the ancient times, there might have been a glorious golden age of cultivation, and great elites of the Genesis tier had emerged, but now, they had long since withered away. A long time could annihilate everything, and Genesis tier couldn't be immortal. Unfortunately, you probably can't learn this sword technique, Ling Han said with some regret. He wasn't a person who treasured his skills, and good things naturally had to be shared with his own people. Who says I can't? Shui Yanyu was very headstrong. Ling Han chuckled. He steered the cloud-piercing shuttle to a small island and decided to set up camp there. He wanted to master the fast formula first. He studied this sword technique with Shui Yanyu, but Shui Yanyu was completely at a loss. She had absolutely no idea where to start. In fact, Ling Han was also very confused, but every time he encountered a bottleneck, the mana source in his dantian would emit a mysterious force to help him overcome the difficulty. This was the regulations of heaven and earth corresponding to the Genesis tier. It was impossible for Ling Han to comprehend it, but with this kind of help, he was able to grasp the fast formula step by step. It was as if he had swallowed a jujube whole. Thus, theoretically speaking, he did not have the right to cultivate this sword technique, but even the heavens were helping him. The place where the jade box had sunk just so happened to be the place where the demon master had rested, and he also had the Black Tower that could suppress the demon master's essence, and he had also cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll. With all these factors added together, he had finally achieved the result he had now. Even so, Ling Han's progress was still ridiculously slow. When he struck out with his sword, Ling Han felt indescribably awkward. His hands, feet, waist, every part of his body was twisted. It was difficult to exert force, and he could not exert force. In any case, it was indescribably strange. He slowly got over it, and the speed at which he struck out with his sword also became faster and faster. However, the faster he struck with his sword, the greater the burden on his body. With every strike, his godly bones clanged loudly. If it were Shui Yanyu, every single one of her bones would definitely be shattered. So fast? Shui Yanyu looked at Ling Han's progress. With every passing day, his strikes would become slightly faster. In the beginning, her eyes could still see Ling Han's sword light, but now it was completely insufficient. his hand, his sword. This was how fast he was, and it was beyond logic. No wonder he had the title of Invincible Sword Saint. This kind of sword technique was practically nature-defying. This is only one technique of the four-form sword technique. Then what kind of power does the slow technique, chaos technique, and calm technique have? Ling Han and Shui Yinyu were both curious. A month later, Ling Han finally achieved small success in the fast technique, and his cultivation level also advanced to the middle stage of the medium extreme with the help of the demonic power source. Additionally, he also took some time to concoct pills, and finally succeeded in concocting the Heavenly Pearl pill. Come on, let's go kill some more pirates. Ling Han laughed loudly. Now that he had mastered his sword technique, he naturally had to improve it through practice. They rode on the cloud-piercing shuttle, so they were not afraid of encountering Sun-Moon tier elites. This was enough to support their escape. The changes in the Star Sea did not affect the Yang clan's business. On the contrary, their business was even more prosperous. Because there was no supergravity in the sea, more and more people came to search for treasures. In the past, one had to be at least at the Mountain River tier to enter the sea. Now, however, Shattering Void tier and even Heaven tier cultivators could enter the sea. The water pressure of about 3,000 meters or so posed no threat at all. Of course, the demonic beasts in the sea were still extremely dangerous. If they died in the mouths of demonic beasts while searching for treasures at the bottom of the sea, they could only blame it on their bad luck. Without the interference of demon masters, the cloud-piercing shuttle could unleash its full potential. Even circling the sea would take a day at most. Because they had been drifting on the sea for a few days, Ling Han had also learned about the sailing routes of the Yang clan from Yang Taiching. Thus, he also steered the cloud-piercing shuttle along the same route. He descended the shuttle, and an intense battle was currently taking place on a large ship. This was a large ship of the Yang clan, and there was an elite at the Sun-Moon tier guarding it. Thus, the pirates naturally also mobilized elites at the same level, and they were currently engaged in a fierce battle on the sea. This would have been impossible in the past, but now that there was no supergravity, Sun-Moon tier elites could walk on the waves of the sea with ease. They could even fly with their physical bodies if they advanced further. Ling Han put away the spaceship and joined the battle with Shui Yinyu, launching a fierce attack on the pirates. The battle was too chaotic. Although they attracted the attention of some people when they descended from the sky, because their cultivation levels were too low, there naturally wouldn't be any elites who paid attention to them. No matter which side they belonged to, they would just have to kill them. Brat die. A pirate immediately slashed his saber over. He was an elite at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and he was confident that his cultivation level was superior to Ling Han's, so he launched an unbridled attack. Ling Han smiled faintly and activated the fast technique. That pirate swung his saber, yet to his shock, he discovered that his arm had been separated from his body. Then, he discovered that his body had actually been sliced into pieces. He had actually been sliced into several pieces in an instant. Only then did he realize in shock. How could he have been sliced into pieces? Could it be that his head had also been chopped off? When did this happen? He hadn't even seen the other party attack. This was the last thought in his life. Chapter 1045. In a chaotic battle, this kind of small action naturally wouldn't attract much attention. After all, their cultivation levels were a bit lower. Ling Han was very satisfied. In fact, he could kill his opponent with a single strike, but after that strike, he felt that time had passed far too quickly. Thus, he slashed left and right, unleashing many more strikes. Although it seemed like he had only unleashed one strike, he had actually unleashed 11 strikes in total. I can go even faster, he said in his mind. Detestable brat, die. Another pirate charged over. He was an elite at the early stage of the high extreme. Ling Han slashed over. Poof! Blood splattered, and the pirate was instantly slashed into a pile of minced meat. What? After being insta-killed 2 people in a row, the nearby pirates finally became wary of Ling Han. 5 people instantly leaped over, one of whom was in the late stage of the high extreme, 2 were in the early stage of the high extreme, and 2 were at the peak stage of the medium extreme. 5 people, and one of them is in the late stage of the high extreme, Ling Han muttered. Theoretically speaking, his current battle prowess was only at the late stage of the high extreme, so the other party alone was enough to pin him down. Together with the other 4 pirates, they would be able to pose a sufficient threat to him. However, this wasn't taking into account the fast technique. Where did this brat come from? He actually dares to interfere in our affairs. The 5 pirates all chuckled coldly. Hee hee, this bitch is quite beautiful. She's not just beautiful, she's practically a vixen. Kill this brat, then capture this brat, and let's have some fun. Of course, the 5 of them attacked Ling Han at the same time. That's a bit challenging. Ling Han unleashed his sword. Shwa shwa shwa. Sword light flashed so fast that no one could see it. Ling Han sheathed his sword as if he hadn't used it at all. Pa pa. 4 of the 5 pirates collapsed, and only the one in the late stage of the high extreme survived. However, there was also a bloodstain on his neck, and his head had almost been sliced off. This pirate couldn't help but tremble in fear. In fact, he hadn't actually caught a glimpse of the sword ray. He had only sensed danger, so he had instinctively spread his elemental energy around his neck. He had even stretched out his hand to block the attack, saving his life. However, 4 of his 5 fingers had fallen off. It was too terrifying. What kind of sword technique was this? It was practically killing people invisibly. It should be known that none of the 5 of them were weaker than the person in front of them. In fact, the person in front of them was even stronger by a small realm. However, in that instant, 4 of the 5 of them had fallen. He had also lost 4 of his fingers, and his neck had been pierced by a sword, almost cutting his throat. Was this kid a 5-star genius? No. Even if he was, his battle prowess should only be on par with his. How could he have almost killed him in an instant? Ling Han's hands were trembling, and his breathing was disordered. The elemental energy in his body was rumbling chaotically. The unique characteristic of the fast formula was that it could break the rules and achieve a speed that surpassed one's realm. Therefore, the rules of heaven and earth would greatly affect the caster. Almost. Ling Han muttered to himself. He had unleashed 5 sword strikes with the intention of killing all 5 of them. However, he hadn't expected that one of them would still survive. He stabilized his breathing and once again activated the fast formula, slashing toward that pirate. The pirate was scared to death. He could only desperately circulate his elemental energy to protect his vitals. He had no choice, as he had no idea where the attack would come from. However, the problem was that the area of defense was too large, and he needed to distribute his elemental energy to several vitals. On the other hand, the attacker only needed to focus his energy on a single point, and the amount of elemental energy consumed was definitely not on the same order of magnitude. Ping 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 ping. Ling Han's sword strikes were too fast, so fast that the elemental energy shield would shatter after just 2 strikes, and it would take time for it to reform. However, the speed at which Ling Han's sword strikes was far faster than the speed at which the elemental energy shield could reform. Blood splattered everywhere. That pirate only managed to resist for less than 3 breaths of time before he unwillingly clutched his chest. His heart had already been pierced, and his dantian had also been destroyed. Ping 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 ping. He collapsed to the ground, never to wake up again. Meanwhile, Ling Han was panting heavily. The fast technique was also extremely taxing on his origin power and stamina. Moreover, it was extremely destructive to his body, and this placed a lot of pressure on him. Despicable brat. Another pirate leaped over. This time, he was at the consummate level. His hair was disheveled, and his face was full of muscles. He held a large machete in his hand, and he didn't look like an immortal-level elite at all. Instead, he looked more like a butcher. He gripped the hilt of his machete with both hands and slashed toward Ling Han. The divine patterns on the blade of the machete lit up, transforming into a dazzling light that made it impossible to see where his attack was coming from. Consummate level? Ling Han was itching to give it a try. He took a deep breath and unleashed a fast attack. In terms of attack speed, the fast technique was probably the most powerful technique in the world. At the very least, immortals at the consummate level of the mountain river tier couldn't surpass Ling Han. Thus, the machete pirate could only switch from offense to defense, and focus on defense. He held his machete horizontally in front of him, hiding most of his body behind the machete. A faint golden glow radiated from his body, and he pushed his defense to the limit. Ha! He didn't just focus on defense. His left hand clenched into a fist, and he punched toward Ling Han. The two of them exchanged a blow, and a bloody line appeared on the neck of the machete pirate. However, the wound wasn't very deep. In contrast, Ling Han's left shoulder had also been struck by a palm strike, and there was a clear dent in it. Truth be told, Ling Han had definitely suffered a greater loss in this exchange. However, those who witnessed the result of this exchange, whether they were pirates or sailors, were all astonished to the extreme. Ling Han was only at the middle stage of the medium extreme, yet the machete pirate was at the middle stage of the consummate level. There was a whole 8 subminor levels between the two of them. Even if the machete pirate wasn't some prodigy, Ling Han's battle prowess was still around 8 stars higher than his. 8 stars? Who could believe it? Who dared to believe it? The machete pirate slashed his neck. He couldn't help but be shocked and enraged. He had the upper hand in this exchange, and the damage to Ling Han would have been even greater. However, if Ling Han's power had been just a bit stronger, that sword strike would have been able to take his life. Realizing that he had gone around the gates of hell, the machete pirate broke out in a cold sweat. He shouted, "I can't let you live." He slashed out with his machete, and a dazzling saber light flashed. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Ling Han was currently weak and injured to kill Ling Han. Otherwise, if he gave this brat a few more years, he would definitely be no match for him. However, he immediately discovered in shock that Ling Han's injured shoulder was rapidly healing. He was so shocked that he even stopped his attack. His mind was filled with incredulity. Such a powerful physique, coupled with such astonishing recovery ability, is this brat a monster? Again, Ling Han said with a smile. A look of fear appeared on the machete pirate's face. His cultivation level was higher than Ling Han's, and his strength was also stronger than Ling Han's. However, his heart was filled with apprehension now, and he didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. What an arrogant brat! A cold humph rang out, and a middle-aged pirate appeared. He was thin, yet there was a projection of a red sun behind him. Sun Moontir. Chapter 1046. "Ha, Shi-Cheng, your opponent is me." With a long laugh, a tall and sturdy man appeared in front of Ling Han. His left hand was normal, but his right hand was shockingly large. It was as black as ink and emitted a metallic luster. "Yang Xian, is this kid a rising star of your Yang family?" The pirate called Shi-Cheng said with a thunderous voice. Yang Xian was the Sun Moon tier elite of the Yang clan, and he was also the man standing in front of Ling Han. His right hand was slightly larger than before, and it was unknown whether it was because he had practiced the heavenly art for too long. "What does that have to do with you?" Yang Xian coldly retorted. His pitch-black right hand began to glow as divine runes appeared, interweaving into an ancient diagram that emitted a terrifying aura. "Ha, so you've come?" Shi-Cheng stared coldly at Ling Han, his killing intent overflowing. This young man was extremely dangerous and had to be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be too late for regrets once he matured. Yang Xian raised his right hand and pointed at Shi-Cheng. He said, "Now that the gravity of the starry sea has disappeared, the good days of you pirates have come to an end. Prepare to die." "Ha, in your dreams." Shi-Cheng attacked, and a beam of sword light streaked across the sky, heading straight for Ling Han. "You dare!" Yang Xian waved his right hand, and divine imprints transformed into chains that shot toward Shi-Cheng. Tyrannical wave flash. Shi-Cheng roared in a low voice, and a wave of water gushed out from his body, blocking the divine imprint chains for a moment. He then took advantage of this opportunity to rush out, brandishing his long sword, aiming straight for Ling Han's chest. Yang Xian was slightly taken aback. He had fought Shi-Cheng a few times before, and he knew that the tyrannical wave flash was Shi-Cheng's ultimate move. It could only be used a limited number of times within a certain period of time. He did not expect Shicheng to use it so quickly. The other party's killing intent was too firm. On the other hand, Yang Xian didn't even know who Ling Han was. He also knew that Ling Han wasn't a guest who had paid to board the ship, so why would he do his best to protect him? The attitudes of both sides were completely different, so the consequences were naturally completely different as well. Shicheng broke through the obstacles and faced Ling Han directly. How could a mere cultivator at the medium extreme rival a Sun-Moon tier elite, even if Shicheng was only at the middle stage of the low extreme? He would definitely be killed in one move. The sword arrives. Wang, the long sword pierced Ling Han's chest, right where his heart was. Then, everything stopped. Put. A crisp sound rang out as Ling Han's palm descended, landing solidly on Shicheng's face. It was clear and loud. In that instant all the battle stopped. Everyone stared at Ling Han, their eyes widened and their mouths opened so wide that a fist could be stuffed inside. Holy shit, what's going on? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why did I hear that Seishi-sama was slapped by someone? Damn, who is that kid? He's too fierce, he actually slapped the pirate leader in the face. Is that guy really in the mountain river tier? When he attacked just now, I only noticed that he had 2 large mountains and a river, which meant that he hadn't advanced into the late stage of the medium extreme. How is this possible? Even Yang Xian spluttered. He couldn't accept this. His skin is so thick that it hurts my hand. Ling Han waved his hand. He had used the sword intent of the fast technique in this slap, so it was extraordinarily fast. Moreover, Shicheng was completely disdainful of him, thinking that he would be able to insta-kill him with a single strike. Thus, he wasn't on guard at all. Who would be on guard against a dead person? However, a Sun-Moon tier elite was still a Sun-Moon tier elite, after all. Although Shicheng didn't have time to dodge when Ling Han slapped him, he still used origin power to defend his face. Thus, although Ling Han had slapped Shicheng, he was the one who was at a disadvantage. Shicheng faltered for a moment before his face paled. Then, it flushed red and finally turned livid. Fuck, even if he had used the Iron Face techniques to shatter Ling Han's hand, he would still have been utterly humiliated. He was a mighty elite of the Sun-Moon tier, yet he had actually been slapped by a Mountain River tier ant. This was a great humiliation. Brat, I'm going to kill you. Shicheng's hair stood on end. He wasn't in the mood to think about why he hadn't been able to kill Ling Han with a single strike and had instead been slapped by him. The important thing was that he had been slapped. He brandished his sword and slashed at Ling Han. Ding! Yang Xian moved, and his thick right hand blocked the blade of Shicheng's sword. A burst of energy surged out, and ping, ping, ping. The deck immediately rippled like waves, and everyone on the deck was sent flying into the water. Fortunately, the sea was no longer strange, so they wouldn't sink to the bottom even if they fell into the water. Soon enough, they were all standing on the surface of the water. Piss off. Otherwise, I'll kill you as well. Shicheng's killing intent soared. He had never been slapped by anyone ever since his cultivation level had reached a certain level, what more by a measly Mountain River tier cultivator. If he didn't kill Ling Han, he would never be able to raise his head again. Of course, even if he killed Ling Han, he would still become a joke. Haha. Yang Xian laughed loudly and said, Shicheng, there are so many people here. You've been slapped, yet you want to kill everyone here to silence them? He shook his head, and his laughter became even louder as he said, I'm truly ashamed to be associated with you. A mighty Sun-Moon tier cultivator was actually slapped by a Mountain River tier cultivator. You dare say that? Shicheng had entered a frenzied state, and he slashed his sword at Yang Xian without any regard for his own life. Every strike of his was filled with disregard for his own life, and it was as if he wanted to take Yang Xian down with him. Yang Xian didn't dare to tease him anymore. He had no intention of dying with Shicheng, so he naturally couldn't provoke Shicheng any further. However, Shicheng had truly gone mad. Right now, he definitely had the urge to kill everyone here in order to cover up his humiliation. Shicheng unleashed his full power. Damn it. Yang Xian had not expected Shicheng to be so furious. He was under immense pressure from his opponent's suicidal attack, and he was constantly on the brink of death. Most importantly, he never intended to risk his life, so he was naturally full of misgivings when he attacked, and was completely at a disadvantage. Ghost Shadow Shift. Once again, Xiqing unleashed an ultimate skill. His body seemed to become illusory, and the red sun behind him became extremely dazzling. It was so bright that it even suppressed the real sun in the sky. What the hell? Yang Xian paled in shock. His opponent was using the power of the Sun and Moon tier. That was the source power of the Sun-Moon tier. Using this power meant that he was truly going all out. Get lost or die, Xiqing said coldly. In fact, he had not completely lost his mind. He had only made such a gesture to show Yang Xian his determination. If Yang Xian tried to stop him again, he would drag Yang Xian down with him even if it meant his death. Yang Xian's mind was spinning. If Ling Han was a descendant of the Yang family, he would risk his life to protect this outstanding descendant of the family. Unfortunately, he wasn't. To risk your life for an outsider? Not worth it. Chapter 1048. After Shui Yanyu passed the heavenly tribulation, Ling Han decided to return. They had already killed enough pirates, and were scared by their guerrilla warfare. Now that the pirates were moving, there would definitely be an elite of the Sun-Moon tier guarding them, so Ling Han didn't dare to act rashly. After all, the gap between the Mountain River tier and the Sun-Moon tier was too big, and he could be insta-killed if he was careless. The Black Tower and the Cloud-Piercing Shuttle were all useless. How could coincidences like Xiqing's sword striking the absolute beginning stone happen every time? Shui Yanyu wasn't Ling Han, and didn't have his freakish physique. This heavenly tribulation was a little difficult for her. Although she successfully passed it, there were many burn marks on her body, and she looked very pitiful. This was the result of Ling Han lending the absolute beginning stone to her. Otherwise, it would be even worse. But there were even more benefits. Those in the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier had a lifespan of 200,000 years, which meant that she wouldn't show any signs of aging until she was at least 50,000 or 60,000 years old. She would always be in the golden age of about 20 years old. For a beauty, this was the greatest value of cultivation, or at least one of them. And with her talent, added with Ling Han's alchemical pills, she might be able to reach the high extreme in a few hundred or even 1,000 years. Then her aging time would be pushed back by tens of thousands of years. This kind of joy even surpassed the increase in strength, and Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. There was really a big difference in the way women and men thought. He couldn't help but look in the mirror, and found that the person in the mirror didn't even look 20 years old. It couldn't be helped. In this life, his cultivation level increased too quickly, and his appearance was far from mature. Sigh, too like a youth? Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. In his last life, he was over 200 years old, and although he was far from entering the aging age, he would at least be a mature youth of 25 or 26 years old. Unlike this person, who was so young that he couldn't accept it. Are you disdaining me for being old? Shui Yanyu rolled her eyes at him. Hee wife, how are you old? Your skin is so tender. I won't feel satisfied if I don't do it a few hundred times a day. Ling Han had also learned some flowery words. Of course, the most important was still his kissing skills. He leaned over and kissed the beauty until she was head over heels for him, unable to control himself. Damn pervert, if you want to kiss me, then kiss me. Why did you have to suck my saliva? You're so dirty. Shui Yanyu spat. And your hand, why do you have to grab my chest? Ling Han nodded and moved his hands down a little, placing them on her perky buttocks. Shui Yanyu was driven mad. Are you doing this on purpose? She labeled Ling Han as a pervert. I'm innocent. I'm kissing you, so I have to find a place to put my hands. Of course, I put them in my favorite place. Ling Han hurriedly complained. This is my favorite place. This is my second favorite place. He pointed at Shui Yanyu's two proud bulges, one above and one below. Shui Yanyu blushed, yet felt a little smug. She was also very satisfied with these two positions. Unfortunately, they were destined to go to this damn pervert. The two of them returned to the imperial capital. They were not in a hurry to travel. Ling Han would still concoct a large number of heavenly pearl pills every day. When they returned, he would sell them and exchange them for even more ingredients. He would then begin the research of the level 3 divine pill, the Jade Heaven pill. The higher the level of the alchemical pill, the more time it took to concoct a cauldron of it, and the more profit it would make. However, though this principle was simple, not many people could do it. Most alchemists were very mediocre and could only concoct level 1 or level 2 divine pills in their entire lives. Thus, level 1 and level 2 divine pills were the most numerous, and their prices were also relatively cheap. However, from level 3 onwards, the price would suddenly rise by a large margin. Now, it was equivalent to Ling Han paying school fees. They spent half a month's time to return to the imperial capital. They passed through the city gates with the identity token of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Shui Yanyu first returned to the Shui clan, and then had to report to the academy. She had advanced into the medium extreme, so it was time to change to the medium extreme division. Meanwhile, Ling Han returned to the academy alone. He was very low-key, but he was now a famous person in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and even in the imperial capital, so how could he be low-key? Early the next morning, many people came to find him. For example, the delicate young Miss Li Weiwei, old friends like Lin Yu and Ma Xing, and some others who desired to make a name for themselves through a single battle came to challenge him. "You can challenge me. Just give me an appearance fee of 8,000 to 10,000 true origin stones," Ling Han said smilingly. "Wasn't it only 10 true origin stones in the past?" Those challengers said indignantly. This was too much of a scam. How could it suddenly increase by so much? I wasn't so famous in the past, so my appearance fee was naturally low. It's different now. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't line up to challenge me, right? If you don't have money, then don't bother me. Prepare 10,000 true origin stones, line up, and register. Little Azura, you're in charge of recording, Ling Han said to the Azura Demon Emperor. Woof. The Azura Demon Emperor possessed the body of the puppet wolf, and very cooperatively learned to bark like a dog. What dignity! Could it be eaten? Everyone was furious. Some people wanted to directly charge up and make a move, but were easily suppressed by the Azura Demon Emperor. He now possessed battle prowess of the late stage of the consummate level, and there really weren't many students in the academy that could defeat him. Damn blockhead, you've run away for so many days in one go. Do you still see me as your master? Li Weiwei was very tsundra. She crossed her arms and tried her best to push out her breasts. Unfortunately, they were a little flat. Though there was some effect, there was really nothing to write home about. Ling Han laughed and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. You've advanced into the mountain river tier." Being interrupted like this, Li Weiwei instantly became happy and said, "Isn't that so? I've already completely refined all the mountain river stones and reached the middle stage of the low extreme," but she immediately became disappointed. "However, I still haven't comprehended the true mystery of the mountain river tier." "That's fine. In any case, you still have some time before you reach the peak stage of the low extreme. You can slowly comprehend it. You're already standing on the mountain river tier, so it'll be much easier to comprehend it later," Ling Han consoled. Li Weiwei glared at him and said, "Then what you mean is that I haven't comprehended it for so long because I'm too stupid?" Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. "If you insist on understanding it that way, then I have nothing else to say." If it were Shui Yanyu, he would still coax her a little. However, he had no intention of developing a relationship with Li Weiwei, so he naturally kept a respectful distance from her. He had no intention of flirting with this young miss. "Oh right." Li Weiwei's expression suddenly became serious, and she said, "Let me tell you some bad news. Zhaolin has broken through to the Sun-Moon tier." "So fast?" Ling Han was slightly surprised. Even a prodigy like Zhao Lun needed a few dozen years to advance a minor level, so advancing a major level had to be even more difficult. How had he broken through to the Sun-Moon tier so quickly? This was extremely illogical. "I heard from father that Great General Zhao seems to have obtained some super divine pill for him." Great General Zhao risked his life and entered an ancient ruin to obtain it. Because of this, Great General Zhao was severely wounded, and even the Empress was alarmed. Li Weiwei clicked her tongue. Ling Han stroked his chin. This was indeed not good news. Chapter 1049. Ling Han temporarily set aside the unpleasant trouble and first dealt with the matter at hand. He was going to sell a large number of heavenly pearl pills. He naturally had to find Li Weiwei. If he sold them, the price would definitely be pushed down very badly. Who asked him to have no connections or background? But if Li Weiwei acted, who would dare to cheat the daughter of the left minister? Even if Li Weiwei had to split the profits, it would definitely be worth it. Li Weiwei had long since tasted the sweetness of earning money, so she obviously patted her chest and took on this task. However, when she saw the number of heavenly pearl pills, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Did you rob some alchemy clan? There were really too many." Normally, an alchemy shop might not even have 1% of their stock. Ling Han chuckled and said, "I'll take 80%, you 20%, how about it?" Li Weiwei nodded gladly. She was just running errands, and the price of alchemical pills was much more expensive than ingredients. Even 20% would allow her to earn a lot. Ling Han met up with Lin Yu, Ma Xing, and the others. They were still in the Shattering Void tier, and if their battle prowess didn't reach 20 stars, they definitely wouldn't attempt to break through to the immortal level. Everyone sighed ruefully. They entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy together, and they practically made no progress, but Ling Han was already in the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier. Why was the gap between them so huge? Li Weiwei's work efficiency was very high. For the sake of money, this young miss had really gone all out. In a short span of 3 days, she had brought in as much as 3 million true origin stones for Ling Han. Even with an 80-20 split, Ling Han's wealth was still as high as 2 million. He only kept a tiny bit of true origin stones to cultivate and maintain the puppet, and exchanged the rest for materials to concoct Jade Heaven pills. Concocting level 3 divine pills in the medium extreme was a bit strenuous, but Ling Han had the Black Tower, so he didn't have to worry about the temperature of the flames. Furthermore, his divine sense was strong and sturdy, far surpassing the average medium extreme. Thus, he could completely concoct level 3 divine pills. At the beginning, they were naturally all failures. In just over a month's time, he had squandered about 90% of the materials worth more than 2 million. However, Ling Han finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel as he fumbled through his failures. If I fail a few hundred or 1,000 more times, I should be able to succeed. This money will be burned. Even Ling Han felt his heart ache a little, because 2 million yuan was not enough at all. He had to add another number. "I'm short of money." Ling Han scratched his head. He had just earned more than 2 million not long ago. How did he suddenly become a pauper? Was there anyone who could be cheated by him? "Young master." In front of Zhao Lun, there was a beautiful woman kneeling. Upon closer inspection, she actually bore some resemblance to Shui Yenyu. Both of them were beautiful and alluring, but Ling Han kept on feeling that there was something lacking, as if something was missing. Zhao Lun was watching the ripples of the lake water with his hands behind his back. It was as if thousands of golden snakes were dancing wildly. Looking closely, his fingers were also moving rhythmically. He had cultivated an ancient mystical technique, and it was to learn from the water to comprehend the rules of heaven and earth. "What is it?" he asked calmly. His tone was calm, and his expression was calm. It was as if he had completely walked out of the shadow of losing to Ling Han. "Ling Han and Miss Shui have returned," the beautiful woman said. Her name was Yang Luan. Zhao Luan's calm face instantly twisted, and his right hand involuntarily clenched. Losing to Ling Han, even if it was because his cultivation level had been restricted, was still the greatest stain in his life. Moreover, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu had been a couple, and this had touched on his reverse scale. Those two pieces of trash, they couldn't even complete such a simple task. Zhao Lun humphed. Now, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu had returned, yet Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong had disappeared. Obviously, not only had they failed to complete their task, they had also been killed by Ling Han. Though there were some discrepancies in the truth, The two of them had indeed failed to complete their task and had indeed died. Zhao Lun could not understand. The two of them were both at the peak stage of the high extreme, and their battle prowess could surpass 2 to 3 stars. Furthermore, they had been bestowed with 2 treasures, yet they still had not been able to kill Ling Han? That ant from a small world had come by opening the sky, and had really obtained the blessing of heaven and earth, so he could not be killed? Could it be that I have to do it myself? He said hatefully. A red sun appeared behind him. Though it was very small, compared to the mountain river tier, it was a qualitative change. That ant from a small world was now the 9th king's subordinate. How many people dared to openly deal with Ling Han? Were they not afraid of the 9th king's wrath? Then, not to mention Zhao Lun, even if Great General Zhao appeared, it would be useless. Young master, why don't we go to the Dark Night Hall and invite someone? Yang Luodan suggested. Zhao Luan's expression involuntarily tightened. He humphed and said, "How dare you?" The Dark Night Hall was the common enemy of the 3 majestic empires, and Zhao Lun was more so the son of a great general. If there was news that he had colluded with the Dark Night Hall, and if it attracted the attention of the Empress, it was even possible that he would be executed upon investigation. Knowingly breaking the law was an additional crime. Yang Lun hurriedly knelt and said, "Please calm your anger, young master." At first, Zhao Lun still wanted to reprimand her, but when he saw Yang Luodan kneeling on the ground and sticking out her perfectly round bottom, he couldn't help but be greatly tempted. Before he had advanced into the Sun Moon tier, Great General Zhao did not allow him to get close to women at all. It was precisely because he was afraid that he would become addicted to them and delay his cultivation. But this prohibition had now disappeared. Zhao Lun did not like ordinary beauties, and there was only Shui Yenyu in his heart. However, Shui Yenyu had shown that she would rather marry a pig or a dog than marry him, which made him very angry. That was why he had deliberately sought out Yang Luodan to be his follower. It was inevitable that he had the intention of using her as a substitute. However, Yang Luodan was not Shui Yenyu, after all, so he had not been interested all along. Only now, when he was stimulated by the news of Ling Han, did his self-control drop to rock bottom. He suddenly pounced on her, and began to take off her clothes in a hurry. "Young master, what are you doing?" Yang Luodan cried out involuntarily, but there was a sliver of smugness in the depths of her eyes. She was not willing to become Zhao Luan's follower. Her ambition was great, and she wanted to become the young madam of the general's residence. Zhao Lun straightened his back and entered Yang Luodan's body and began to madly sprint. Yang Luodan hugged Zhao Lun in reverse, a sliver of a smile curling up the corners of her lips. The first step of her plan had already succeeded. "Young master, what do you think of my idea? We can conceal our identities. In any case, the Dark Night Hall only recognizes money, not people," she said as she panted. Merely satisfying Zhao Luan's needs was useless. She would only become a tool for him to vent his frustrations. How could Zhao Lun have normal judgment at this moment? He nodded randomly and said, "I'll leave this matter to you." After saying this, he greedily sucked on Yang Luodan's chest, imagining her as Shui Yenyu, and couldn't help but become even more excited. Ling Han had already used up all the ingredients, but was still unable to concoct the Jade Heaven pill. Now that his pockets were empty, he could only go and concoct some heavenly pearl pills to earn money, using pills to nurture pills. Time passed very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 5 months had already passed. For cultivators, 5 months was only the blink of an eye, and was no different from a few days in the eyes of ordinary people. But for Ling Han, a month's time was enough for him to undergo a huge change. The Jade Heaven pill was finally concocted, and he had also advanced into the late stage of the medium extreme. Chapter 1050. Divine level pills were all quite expensive. However, there were more level 1 and level 2 alchemists, so the pills of these 2 levels were relatively cheaper, but from level 3 divine pills onwards, they were so expensive that they could drive people to despair. If ordinary mountain river tier cultivators could still save up some money to buy a few level 1 and level 2 divine pills, then level 3 divine pills were definitely not something that could be bought in a short amount of time. The cheapest level 3 divine pills started at 1,000 true origin stones, and for those that were more difficult to concoct, it was not uncommon to start at 2,000. Jade Heaven pills belonged to the category of level 3 divine pills that were more difficult to concoct, and the success rate was low. Thus, level 3 alchemists did not like to concoct them. Though level 4 alchemists had the ability, which level 4 divine pill was not more expensive. Why would they concoct level 3 divine pills? Thus, when Ling Han could concoct Jade Heaven pills in large quantities, he finally opened up an endless source of wealth for himself. This made him think of opening his own shop. Selling the pills directly to pharmacies, though he could quickly earn back his cash, a considerable portion of the profits would be taken by the pharmacies, and the proportion was not small. He told this idea to Li Weiwei, but Li Weiwei was not very interested in opening a shop, because she hated trouble. Ling Han turned to discuss it with Shui Yenyu. The Shui clan still did not acknowledge his identity. Though Ling Han did not care much about the Shui clan's rules, he knew that Shui Yenyu still desired the clan's approval. Thus, he had to consider for her sake. If he could open a medicinal shop that made money every day as a dowry, the opposition from the Shui clan would definitely be much smaller. Shui Yenyu was clever and immediately guessed his intentions. She naturally agreed, and even took the initiative to kiss him to express the excitement in her heart. Ling Han did as he said. With money, it would be easy to get things done even in the imperial capital, not to mention that he had a considerable status now. Who did not know that behind him stood the 9th king? After choosing the location, it was time to renovate and recruit workers. But at this time, Ling Han encountered a problem. No one applied. He spent some effort to find out that it was the 2 sons of the great clans, Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan, who had jointly issued an order forbidding anyone from working in his shop. They were the descendants of 2 great generals. Who would dare to ignore their words? Ling Han had indeed obtained the 9th king's favor, but how could the 9th king even care about a few mere shop assistants? Therefore, although Ling Han had raised the salary, no one dared to work for him. Ling Han thought about it and decided to recruit people from the academy. This time, his conditions were much higher. If they worked in his shop, they would be able to get a different number of divine pills every month. Level 1, 10 level 2, 5 level 3, and 1 level 3. Just like that, there were many people who responded. They were mainly here for the tier 3 divine pills. Although there was only one every month, this thing was basically a market with a price but no supply. It was monopolized by the large clans, and they didn't even have enough to supply their own people. How could they possibly take it out to sell? It wasn't that there weren't any elixir stores, but there were only a few of them every month. Once they were put on display, they would be snatched up immediately. Ling Han spent a lot of money and directly recruited 10 people, dividing them into 2 shifts. Just like that, the elixir store opened smoothly. Although the variety of alchemical pills sold was very limited, only a pitiful 3 kinds, in this day and age, would there be any fear of not being able to sell the alchemical pills on hand? Especially the Jade Heaven pill. Even though it was priced at 2,000 per pill, it was still fought over, so Ling Han had no choice but to change his sales method. He was limited to 5 pills a day, and each person was limited to 1. It couldn't be helped. The refining time of the alchemical pills was there. He could only refine 1 cauldron of Jade Heaven pills a day. 1 cauldron of 10 pills, and Ling Han had to work at full speed. He basically had to refine 1 cauldron every 2 days. However, in the process of refining the alchemical pills, Ling Han also had some comprehension. He had the demonic power source in his body, so he didn't need to worry about the accumulation of origin power. What he lacked was the comprehension of the regulations of heaven and earth. Refining alchemical pills was a process of comprehension. Because medicinal ingredients grew by absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the process of refining alchemical pills was to interweave the divine patterns in them. That was the embodiment of the regulations of heaven and earth. The more alchemical pills he refined, the more profound Ling Han's comprehension of the regulations of heaven and earth became. As the saying goes, all methods lead to the same destination. So this is the principle. Ling Han nodded. However, alchemical pills could only increase one's comprehension of cultivation level. Cultivation techniques and secret techniques still had to be cultivated by oneself. Thus, apart from refining alchemical pills, Ling Han focused all of his attention on cultivating the fast technique. This sword technique was created by the Sword Saint, and it was known to be invincible. It was definitely the highest level secret technique in the immortal realm. Since he could cultivate it, he naturally wouldn't waste this opportunity. Big Brother Lun, I found a death warrior. In the great General Zhao's residence, Yang Luodan snuggled in Zhao Luan's arms. He was provided by the Dark Night Hall, and his cultivation level is at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. However, even elites at the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier would only think that he's at the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier. Moreover, he has also cultivated a secret technique. Once he activates it, his battle prowess will leap into the pseudo-Sun Moon tier. However, he will only have an hour to live. Let him challenge Ling Han. After killing Ling Han, he will also die very soon. He won't reveal any secrets. A dangerous smile appeared on Yang Luodan's face. She had the intention to become the young madam of the great general's residence, so she naturally had to remove the thorn in her flesh, Ling Han. Otherwise, it would be Zhao Luan's humiliation as well as hers. Zhao Luan pondered for a moment, and then asked, "Didn't you leave behind any clues?" "No, I used 3 layers of disguise techniques to change my appearance and aura. The members of the Dark Night Hall can't possibly know my identity," Yang Luodan said confidently. "All right, then let him challenge Ling Han." Zhao Luan nodded. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to kill Ling Han in the imperial capital. Even the Dark Night Hall wouldn't be able to find a chance to do so. However, the Dark Night Hall has asked for 300,000 true origin stones, Yang Luodan said hesitantly. 300,000. Even a rich second generation like Zhao Luan almost jumped up. However, he immediately restrained himself and said, "Agree to it. Humph, as long as we can kill that lowly commoner, so what if we spend 300,000? Furthermore, there will definitely be bets. If we bet on Ling Han's death, we can still earn our money back." "Brother Luan is so smart," Yang Luodan said fawningly. She stretched out a hand and teased Zhao Luan. Zhao Luan was instantly straightened. He turned Yang Luodan around and began to make love to her. After the novelty had worn off, only this kind of position could arouse his interest. That was because this woman was not Shui Yanyu, after all. Only from behind would she have some resemblance to Shui Yanyu. From the front, the difference was too great. Meanwhile, Yang Luodan revealed a sinister expression. How could she not know Zhao Luan's thoughts? However, Zhao Luan didn't know that when she went to the Dark Night Hall, she had purposely disguised herself as Shui Yanyu. With the similarity between the two of them, and the fact that she had purposely imitated Yang Luodan, the possibility of being mistaken for Shui Yanyu was extremely high. Once Ling Han died, if the Dark Night Hall was traced, Shui Yanyu would be the one to bear the blame, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She didn't want to be some substitute. Chapter 1052. A day passed, and it was already the day of the battle between Ling Han and Wu Ziren. This was a battle in the Iron Blood Stadium. Thus, entering this battlefield meant that one was responsible for their own life and death. There was no need to show mercy in battle, and there was no need to bear any consequences for killing one's opponent. On this day, the Iron Blood Stadium was overcrowded. In fact, many people didn't even have a seat, and they were all standing on their tiptoes. Originally, the Iron Blood Stadium didn't have standing tickets, but the battle this time was too attractive. Even though the ticket price had been raised to 50 true origin stones per ticket, there were still many people fighting to buy them. Shui Yanyu came with Ling Han, and when they entered the Iron Blood Stadium, she couldn't help but be shocked. Why were there so many people? It wasn't that she hadn't come to the Iron Blood Stadium before, but now, it was so crowded that even a needle couldn't fit in. Fortunately, because Ling Han was one of the participants in the battle, the Iron Blood Stadium was already waiting for him. They immediately arranged a special passage for him, and the two of them could enter the stadium smoothly. Ling Han could still rest for a while. There was still some time before the battle began. Is that Wu Ziren really an assassin from the Dark Night Hall? Shui Yinyu had just heard this from Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and said, most likely. Shui Yinyu frowned slightly and said, the Dark Night Hall has already sent 2 waves of people, totaling 3 assassins, to assassinate you. Even Zhou Gaoyang and Yin Yuanxiang failed. They're both at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. Although you weren't the one who attacked, the Dark Night Hall definitely overestimated your battle prowess because they didn't know. Now that they sent this Wu Ziren to challenge you, he must be stronger than Zhou Gaoyang and Yin Yuanxiang. Her analysis was very reasonable. The members of the Dark Night Hall were all assassins, not idiots. Why would they send someone to die after knowing Ling Han's battle prowess? Ling Han nodded and said, so I'm also curious. His cultivation level is similar to mine, so what kind of battle prowess can he display? You actually disregarded danger for the sake of curiosity? Shui Yinyu was about to explode in anger. Did this man think for her? Did he know how worried she was? Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. Ling Han hugged Shui Yinyu lightly. It was rare that he only hugged her and did not do anything else. Shui Yinyu could only sigh softly and tidied up Ling Han's appearance. Be careful. I will, Ling Han said seriously. His next words were not serious. You can go home and wash yourself clean. Wait for me to love you. Shui Yinyu didn't get angry this time. She merely leaned into his embrace and said, damn pervert, I know you're very powerful and far surpasses your peers, but the world is big and anything can happen. You definitely can't be careless. Ling Han patted her shoulder lightly. Blockhead, it's time for something to happen to you. Li Weiwei rushed in, but when she saw this scene, she hurriedly covered her eyes with her hands and said, Aya, I'm going to get a needle hole. What needle eye? Nonsense, Ling Han said with a smile. Then, he said softly to Shui Yinyu, I'm going out. I'll wait for you. Shui Yinyu only gave him 3 words. Ling Han nodded and strode out. Li Weiwei ran over and asked in a small voice, Big Sister Shui, you really like this blockhead? Though Shui Yinyu was a little shy, she still nodded. Li Weiwei bared her teeth. She didn't think that her messing around would actually bring Ling Han and Shui Yinyu together. She was a little worried and said, but that guy is only the sovereign of a small world. Though it sounds good, he really doesn't have any background. Will your family agree? Shui Yinyu was also a little troubled. Ling Han's natural talent was really excellent, and he would definitely become an overlord in the future. But the problem was, could the Shui clan wait that long? It should be known that Zhao Luan definitely wouldn't give up easily. Once he lost his patience and forced them into a fight, what would the Shui clan do? We'll just take it one step at a time, she said helplessly. Li Weiwei pulled her up and said, let's go, let's see how this blockhead beats up that Wu Ziren. The 2 women also walked out. They naturally didn't walk in the same direction as Ling Han. Instead, they went to the VIP platform of the Iron Blood Stadium. With the reputation of the left minister, this was naturally one of the best seats in the entire stadium. Coincidentally, there were also a few people on the VIP platform. Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan. Yinyu, long time no see, Zhao Luan said. He was still as handsome as ever, and there was an enchanting smile on his face. Moreover, because he had advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, he exuded a powerful aura, making him seem like a true god that people could look up to and worship. A Sun-Moon tier cultivator who was less than 1,000 years old was extremely impressive even in the chaotic star's majestic empire. Based on the current information, only Su Ran from 300,000 years ago could suppress him. Zhao Luan had enough capital to be proud. A hint of disgust appeared on Shui Yenyu's face, but she still bowed slightly and said, Greetings, Heir Zhao. Zhao Lin was the only son of the great General Zhao, and he was also at the Sun-Moon tier. He had been appointed by the Empress, and his name was engraved on the totem. Thus, all ordinary people had to bow when they saw him. This was the rule. Zhao Lin was annoyed. The more courteous Shui Yenyu was to him, the more she pushed him away. He forcefully suppressed his emotions and asked, Yenyu, Who do you think will win today's battle? Without waiting for Shui Yanyu to answer, he said, I think it will be Wu Ziren. I even bet 100,000 true origin stones on him, betting that he can defeat Ling Han in 10 moves. Ah, Zhao Lun, you're actually so confident. Sha Yuan said with a smile. Zhao Lun smiled proudly. He had originally wanted to bet more, but after paying a large sum of money to the Dark Knight Hall, he was actually short of money. This 100,000 true origin stones had even been borrowed from his followers. Although he said it was a loan, it was actually more like extortion. This made him slightly annoyed. The only son of the great General Zhao was actually so poor that he was extorting his subordinates? How could he accept this? Thankfully, he was confident that he would definitely win, and very soon he would even up the debt. That's natural. Ling Han is merely an ant from a small world, so what trump cards or ultimate moves could he have? He naturally would not be a match for Wu Ziren, Zhao Lun said. When these words were spoken, the people nearby all showed strange smiles. Zhao Lun, have you forgotten that you were beaten up by Ling Han more than half a year ago? Now that the wounds on your face have healed, have you forgotten who beat you up? Li Weiwei said mercilessly. There were only a few people here who dared to mock Zhao Lun to his face, and she was one of them. Zhao Lun involuntarily clenched his fists, and blue veins throbbed on his forehead. The aura that overflowed from his body suddenly became incredibly violent, turning into the shadows of sabers, spears, and arrows. This was enough to insta-kill any mountain river tier cultivator. Hee, that's because Brother Luan's cultivation level has been sealed, so it's unfair in the first place. Yang Luodan interrupted. We are all of the younger generation, and that ant's cultivation level is clearly lower than Brother Luan's, yet he insists on lowering Brother Luan's cultivation level. How would Brother Luan be able to display the battle prowess that he should? If that ant is allowed to reach the same cultivation level as Brother Luan, he will definitely lose. Moreover, Brother Luan has already advanced into the Sun-Moon tier. Reaching the Sun-Moon tier before 1,000 years of age is also rare in the history of our majestic empire. It could be said that he is the first person to do so in 100,000 years. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.